Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and welcome back to another Commander Chronicles. We're all the way up to 2017, and I'm joined by the wonderful Melissa DeTora to walk through it. How you doing today, Melissa?
I'm doing great, as usual. Happy to be here and talk about Magic cards, some of which I've even played with.
Wow, you played with some of these. That's
Only some.
Yeah, well, I played with a lot of them, as we'll get into, and this set in particular is very special, but we won't quite spoil that quite yet. Just gonna say before you get started, as a reminder, these are, Melissa and I taking time out to make these happen, and we love your feedback. So any comments you leave, super awesome. It boosts up that algorithm for us, which is always really useful. But we've loved reading through all your comments and all your tweets. The Cafe and Wizards put out a sign for us saying, "Great work, Gavin and Melissa." So it really, really, really means a lot. So please go ahead and, if you enjoy this, let us know. And we'll keep making them as long as, people keep loving them. So thank you. Thank you so much. And the response to the last episode, 2016 I'd waited for a long time. That was like a big one for so many people. I think this one will be too. And I really appreciate you taking the time to leave a comment. So subscribe, leave a comment, like, all that good stuff. And then secondly, of course, the golden rule is in effect. Melissa, do you want to tell me what the golden rule is?
Oh, wow. Every time you ask me, I'm always like, what is it again? But I believe the golden rule is we are going to be we're going to be critiquing Magic cards. And a lot of people put so much love into these cards, and they're our coworkers or like maybe our former coworkers. And we don't mean anything like personal about like any of these people. We're just talking about Magic design. That's it. That's pretty much the gist, right? I might have missed something.
Oh, you nailed it, Melissa. You do better every time. You crushed it. Great work. Some of those people might even be in this room right now. So we'll get to talking about that. Oh yeah. Let's dive right on in. Commander 2017. This is a big one. Released August 25th, 2017. That's an interesting note for one reason, actually. Every other year up until now, I think we've seen them released in November, like end of the year cycle. So C16 came out at the end of 2016, and then Commander 2017 actually came out only about 6 months later in August. There's like kind of a conscious effort to get Commander back into the summertime, just was seen as the right place to put it. And the big Commander decks have stayed in the spring, summer time slot for a while now. So I think that's kind of interesting. But anyway, it came after Hour of Devastation and before Ixalan. So that's kind of where it is for your time frame. If you remember, standard deck wise, people were playing Ramunap Red, all kinds of attacking and sacrificing their deserts to deal damage, God Pharaoh's Gift control decks, and then one of my personal favorites, the Black-Green Constrictor deck. I don't know if you played any of those at all, Melissa, but I always loved them.
Nice. Yeah, I was working at Wizards at the time, mostly working on standard. So I remember working on Guilds of Ravnica, I believe, during that time. Maybe Ravnica Allegiance or War of the Spark. Don't really know when the timeline is, but play design had pretty much just started during that time. It started that year. So things were all very new to us. Our processes were much different, even though our job didn't really change so much. But I was not playing any Commander at this time, that's for sure.
Wow, I didn't realize you were already up to Guilds of Ravnica by the time this hit for you all. So that's impressive.
That sounds about right. Did Guilds of Ravnica come out in 2018? I believe it did, right?
I don't know what time even means anymore. Guilds of Ravnica.
I don't either.
In 2018? Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, 2018 for Guilds of Ravnica, 2019 for War of the Spark. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so we were working on it about when these decks came out then.
Let's look it up to make sure we don't sound really silly in retrospect. Mm-hmm. We have the power of the internet. October 5th, 2018. You nailed it, Melissa. Great work. Okay. So that's what you were up to. You're working on these. I'll tell you what I was up to, Melissa. I was designing Commander 2017. that was what I was doing. Because that was me. It was me. I was the lead designer of Commander 2017. So we've now officially got to the era where I have started working on Commander products. C17 is the first one I ever worked on. I played the others. I saw them in design or whatever. But this was the first one I was actually a part of and leading, which was quite an adventure. So to kind of walk you through that, there's 56 new cards in these decks, same as C16. And the designers, me, Gavin Verhey, the lead of design. Hooray. Jules Robbins. Some of you might have heard of Jules, but this was actually one of his first ever teams, which is pretty cool. Mark Gottlieb and Ben Hayes on the design team. And then I handed it off. So I did the initial design for the set for a while. And then we went into development and I handed it off to Brian Hawley, who led that section of the team, Glenn Jones, Jules Robbins, and Mark Globus. So a bunch of cool people working on this product. But the biggest thing right out of the gates, the thing that I got when I was handed this, is we're going to be changing how we were doing commander decks in a couple pretty big ways. And do you know, Melissa, what those ways are?
Do I know what they were? Every year release is what I think to start. Maybe 4 decks instead of, I don't know, a random number of decks.
Yeah.
But besides that, I don't know. Is that mostly accurate?
Yeah. I mean, we're already doing them 1 a year at that point, basically, anyway, besides the 1 year that we missed. But we're going to 4 decks from 5 decks, which was a pretty big shift. And that was because we decided that the games of Commander, we did some research on what people were doing, and people were playing in 4-player pods, not 5-player pods. So it made sense to release 4 decks instead of 5 decks because that's how people were mostly playing Magic. Now, kind of our stance since then has been we'll do 5 decks if there's a strong theme for it. Like Strixhaven made a ton of sense to do 5 decks. There are 5 colleges, you know. But otherwise, we do 4 decks, like in Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. And then the other big thing that we did is up until this point, we had cycled all of our decks through colors. It was, these are going to be the allied color decks, or these are going to be the 3-color decks, or these are going to be the monocolor decks, or whatever. And we'd kind of run through a lot of the good color themes. And so the move was, okay, let's do a different thing. Let's pick a theme that is not about colors and build all the decks around those. You can do whatever colors you want, just have a theme for the year. And day one of design, the theme that was handed to me by our architecture team was tribal. So these are going to be 4 tribal decks. I could pick the tribes, I could do whatever I wanted, but that's what I was told. And that's where our story begins. So 4 tribal decks. We looked at a lot of different types. I've got a picture on my phone still of a whiteboard of like all the ones we brainstormed. Some of the ones we didn't use: 5-color slivers, colorless Eldrazi, blue-black ninjas, Bant Merfolk. Sorry, Professor. Maybe someday you'll get your Bant Merfolk commander deck. Black, green, white elves to kind of like be able to use the Shadowmoor elves that were green along with like the black green elves from Lorwyn. And then white, blue, black zombies, which would have blended Amonkhet zombies with Innistrad zombies. But we did not do those. We're like, I had lots of other ideas as well. We looked at all the way down to hominids and rats and all this stuff. But we settled on 4 decks in particular. So, you ready to dig into the decks, Melissa?
Yeah, but first, I want to tell you something that I remember from back during this time. Now that you're talking about it. Yeah. I remember you were going around with like a questionnaire of like what people's favorite tribes were and like what you think would be the most popular commander tribes. And I remember taking that, like, I don't know if it was like a survey or a questionnaire or whatever, but you had this piece of paper and I like wrote, I don't know, I probably picked dragons or something.
Man, amazing. So see, you contributed to that too, Melissa. You didn't even know
Who
it.
Knew?
You were influential.
Yep.
And here we are. Yeah, I mean, basically our team brainstormed a ton of different ideas for tribes. And then one of the things I did was I walked around the building and gave it to not just people in game design, but other people in the building too, of just from all disciplines, to just see like, hey, which of these tribes is most interesting to you? And I wanted to get a wide variety of opinions because I thought it'd be really important to see not just what game designers thought, but what average people in the building thought. And we'll get to one deck in particular where that ended up being really important. But I did do that, and actually, he hasn't done them in a while because we're all stuck at home. But Mark Rosewater's head-to-heads he runs on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you aren't familiar, if you don't follow Mark on Twitter, pre-pandemic, he would do this thing where he would make these brackets of 16 things that all fit a category. Like, I don't know, 16 mechanics or 16 artifact creatures or whatever the case might be. And then people would vote on Twitter for which one would win under whatever metric. And then at the end, we would see like who won the biggest. And in Wizards, it was always extra fun because you would get your own bracket. Mark would give everyone a bracket, and you could try and guess what was going to make it to the end of the bracket, right? Like, what was going to win. So Mark actually saw me handing around these pieces of paper to everyone, and he's like,
"Are you doing head-to-head?"
Well, no. Actually, here's the wild part. The first head-to-head was tribes. Mark saw this survey and was like, "I have this idea for head-to-head. What if I did a head-to-head tribes?" And that's actually how the whole head-to-head thing began on Twitter. So it's a fun fact.
Wow. Did not know that.
Mark already had the idea for it, so it wasn't like I gave him the idea in the first place, but it was the first one that he did. And Wizards, I believe, is the tribe that won the head-to-head, which gave me pretty high confidence it would be a good tribe for this product. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Or maybe it was dragons. Maybe Wizards made it the top 4 in dragons ones. I don't remember, but it did very well. Did very, very well. right? So 4 decks, 4 tribes. Let's talk about them. The first deck up is Draconic Domination, which, if you can probably guess from the name, is a Dragons deck. And it is a 5-color Dragons deck. We talked for a long time about, should we pare it down? It was just like, nope. Dragons are awesome. They're in all 5 colors. And we'd never done a 5-color deck before. So it made a lot of sense to try out a 5-color deck. So walking through the commanders, we've got the Dragon, first of all, which has a keyword called Eminence, which we're going to have a section later where we'll have a lot to say about Eminence. I feel confident in that. But we're going to kind of hold off on the longer Eminence discussion at the beginning. So the Dragon, 4 white, blue, black, red, green for a 10/10 legendary creature dragon avatar. The artwork has scale dragons for size, which always made me feel, I don't know, thought that was cool. It's got Eminence. As long as the Dragon is in the command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So all your dragons always cost 1 less. It's got flying. And whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So draws you a bunch of cards, lets you play a thing for free whenever your dragons attack. If you have a dragon in play, it has like pseudo haste, you get to do it right away. Thoughts on the Dragon as a command?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. Well, first, let me start out by saying I am probably never casting this card because this card has a very powerful ability, and I don't even need to like have this in play, you know? There's this powerful ability in the command zone. So, like, this ability is stronger than like the card is in play. You know what I mean? So that's kind of unfortunate. Yeah, like, I don't know. Eminence is, I think it's not the most like healthy ability for commander because it's just not encouraging you to play your commander. You know, it's just saying, hey, I just have this like powerful advantage for free that I don't even have to like do any work for. You know, I just get this ability for free. Yeah, so I think the mechanic Eminence aside, like this particular design is not great because you're getting a free resource in mana, which like is just an overwhelming advantage over your opponents. You know, like if the resource was something not really worth like a card, you know, maybe that's more reasonable. Like I think one of the abilities that we'll talk about one of the decks later fits that criteria, I think. So yeah, that is unfortunate, and I'm not a fan of that. As for the card itself, it's 9 mana, and this ability is pretty awesome. Like 9 mana cards, you should be getting a lot of stuff, a lot of value, and this does it for me. Like lots of card draw and more mana cheating, I guess. But yeah, like super cool design if you can actually pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what your top end of a dragon deck wants, right? It's like after you've played your dragons, you cast this thing, and then your dragons attack, you're probably low on cards, you draw some cards, put a dragon into play. So it's pretty sweet. You know, it does look expensive too, but, you know, and I've seen, I don't know, like Brian Kibler or whoever played his dragons deck, he gets this into play, and it's pretty brutal when he does. So,
but this card is lying to you. It never costs 9 mana. It always costs 8.
It is other dragon spells.
Oh, other dragons. So, okay, then this card is not lying to you. Okay.
We did think of that one. But yeah, it's very powerful. We'll have a long discussion about Eminence later, but this is definitely a very strong one. Of course, the tribe did cheat on mana. If you are going to pick one, dragons does make sense for because they're all kind of expensive. I know when we were designing it, one of the challenges was a lot of the dragons we wanted to put in the deck were kind of just medium, right? They're like, oh, I'm a 6 mana 4/4 flyer with a ability. And it's like, that's not really a commanderable card. At 1 mana less, they get a lot spicier, but you know, a lot of things get spicier when they cost 1 mana less. So yeah.
Turns out cards cost what they do for a reason.
It's true. It's like whenever someone asks us, I'm sure you get this sometimes, Melissa, did you know this card would be better if it costs less mana? And it's like, yeah, we do. Anyway,
yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yes, we could have costed it less and made it stronger. I agree. Next up, Okagachi, Vengeful Kami. Appropriate now, given that Kamigawa Neon Dynasties, actually, as we're recording this, the pre-release is this weekend. Okagachi Vengeful Kami, 1 white, blue, black, red, green. For a 6/6 legendary creature dragon spirit, it's got flying. It's got trample. Whenever Okagachi Vengeful Kami deals combat damage to a player, if that player attacked you during their last turn, exile target non-land permanent that player controls. So, if they attack you, you can attack them, and then you can eat their thing. So it's got a bit of a politics going on here. Thoughts on Okagachi?
So this is really funny, but first, this card is not for me as a player because I'm never going to remember who attacked me. And I think, I don't know where this came up, but I don't know if it was this card, but I was playtesting a card that cared about other people who attacked me or something. And I remember saying, I'm never going to remember. So, yeah, I don't like it. And then, the opponents were like, oh, Melissa, you're so forgiving. And I was like, what? I didn't really think about it as a way to this person attacked me. Now I want to get revenge on them. That was never really how I played, For me, I just don't remember what happened the turn before in Commander games because there's so much going on. All right. Anyway, back to the actual card. Let's see. Oh yeah, sure. This card's pretty cool. It's pretty expensive. It doesn't do anything immediately, and you have to untap with it to get any sort of value, and you only will get that value if somebody attacked you. So it looks like this card just discourages people from attacking you. So probably not the most fun card overall. It's kind of it puts the opponent in a situation where if I attack them, I'm going to lose one of my permanents. So I'm just not going to attack. So probably not a great design, actually.
I think there's a couple of things going on here. One, it's it's kind of a it's a political card, which some people certainly like, sure, but for a 6 mana cost creature, it's I'm not really looking for a kill one thing on a political card. The other thing for me, so I guess there's two things. One, an interesting story is that originally Okagachi was the face of the deck and had the Your Dragon's text, and Your Dragon had Okagachi's text, and they got flipped. And so that happened at one point. Basically, I was rattling off me and Kelly Diggs at the time were working on what are the coolest dragons that have never had cards that are 5 colors, and we came up with Okagachi and the Your Dragon. So we tried that. But the bigger thing about Okagachi for me is Okagachi is the biggest name in the original Kamigawa storyline. It's this huge dragon that it's a gigantic spirit dragon. It rules so many things. It I think rules over the Kami's realm or something. It it's on Final Judgment, exiling all the creatures without a care in the world. And it feels like it should be awesome and huge and epic. And you look at this, you're it's a 6 mana, 6/6 flyer with a political ability, It just doesn't really feel Okagachi-y to me. And I know this card disappointed many players. And while I didn't make the final version of this card, it was actually tweaked after I handed the set off to Brian. I definitely wish in retrospect that we had done something, I think, a little more epic for this card. But I agree with
that. Makes sense after hearing about his story.
Yeah.
I did not really know how important this character was in Kamigawa.
Yeah. He I think it was that which was taken was Okagachi's. And that's what started the whole Kami war. So it was bad news. But the flavor at least is okay, right? Someone takes a thing from you and then you go back and retaliate for it. So maybe that's all right. And then third episode, something new this year that was not true in the previous years that I pushed to change was having a third legend. So it used to be that you would have your 2 face legends, your 2 new legends, and you'd have a third legend that was an existing Magic legend that fit your color identity. So it's you would have another green legendary creature or something like that as your third legend. For me, at the time, we weren't making as many legendary creatures. And for some of these tribes, I was what if we gave people all 3, right? I didn't want to do Sign of the Your Dragon or something in the 5-color deck. I wanted to create something new for those players. I'll say that I think it's an interesting aside. Now that we make way more legends, we've actually started to pull back. And now we only do 2 in decks a lot of the time. So we've actually reversed our course on that philosophy as we've made more legends. And I'm sure you've noticed that too. Internally, but at the time that was the philosophy, which I think came from a good place. So the third legend, you actually got to go down to the artifacts to take a look at, and that is Ramos.
Right, let's see.
Yeah, it's Ramos, Dragon Engine from the Mercadian Mask storyline. How could you forget Ramos and his heart and all the other pieces, Eye of Ramos and other things. I think although he might be from Dominaria eventually, you'd have to ask Ethan Fleischer for the lore. But anyway,
Ramos was a Mercadian Mask, right? Remember the tooth of Ramos and the claw of Ramos and all that?
Yeah, so he's from Mercadian Masks, but there's something weird about Ramos. I can't remember. Someone who knows the story better than me, and I know it pretty well, we can post it in the comments. But there's something about Ramos actually being involved in Dominaria. I think there's like some like very weird, I don't know. I read an article maybe once, someone in the comments, maybe I'm going nuts. I don't know. I've been doing this for 10 years. But anyway, Ramos Dragon Engine, 6 mana, legendary artifact creature -- dragon, flying. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Ramos Dragon Engine for each of that spell's colors. So you cast a WUBRG spell, you get 5 +1/+1 counters. So that's pretty sweet. Then you might be wondering, how is this card WUBRG? Like, or how is this card a WUBRG commander? It doesn't have all the mana symbols in it. Well, that's what the third ability is for. Remove 5 +1/+1 counters from Ramos. Add white, blue, black, red, green. Activate this ability only once each turn. So if you cast a 5-color spell, you get a 10 mana refund just at its base if you want to turn in those 5 +1/+1 counters. So it's pretty spicy. I know some folks have definitely tried storming with Ramos and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure you can get infinite mana with this somehow.
Yeah,
like anything that adds counters and untaps it or something.
I mean, you are limited to once per turn, so you can't like jam it a million times in the same turn, but a blink effect or, you know, bouncing it to your hand can reset that pretty easily. So
yeah, and also there's 4 turns in a turn cycle in Commander, so you can make a lot of mana each turn cycle at least.
That's definitely true. This is actually a card, you know, I thought this was a cool character to bring back. Props to Brian Hawley. He came up with this in the final design of the product, all on that team's own. Thoughts on Ramos Dragon Engine?
I like that it encourages you to play all 5 colors. Like, when you're playing a 5-color deck, since you have every color at your disposal, like, generally what people try to do is just play all the strongest cards that exist in Magic, and you just, like, have that flexibility. But this one is saying, no, play only cards that are WUBRG. So I think that is, like, a more interesting way to think about, like, 5-color decks. So I do like that. And the payoff is pretty spicy. Like, this card is powerful. It's fun. It's like a bit on the strong side, but like, I think overall it's encouraging good things and is cool.
Yeah, I like this card a decent amount. I guess my only 2 notes really on it are, 1, I know we're trying to move away from doing colorless commanders that have all 5 color identity, right? Stuff like Golos makes it a little too easy, but you know, this is a 6 mana cost card. So, you know, maybe that's okay. Maybe this could have been a card that had the colors in its mana cost or something like that, though, or at least some of them. Although it wouldn't fit the flavor that way. The second one is just, it's always scary when you're making a ton of mana, right? That's the thing we got to watch out for. But
yeah, at least it is capped, card. Like you said. But like, to your point about Golos, like, that is the type of card that is telling the player, hey, put only the strongest cards in Magic in your deck. It doesn't have any type of restriction, you know?
Yeah.
And like, that's where things can like get kind of dangerous with 5-color decks. But like this Ramos, like, yes, you can still do that, like, but this is really telling you, if you want to get paid off, you want to do this like many color, like, you know, WUBRG or 4 colors or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it tells you to play like 3+ color cards in your deck, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, in general, I like the card. I think it's pretty cool and a cool solve to get like a 5-color artifact in the 5-color Dragons deck. So, you know, this deck's theme, you know, sometimes we got to like kind of dig for the theme, kind of figure out, hey, what the theme's going to be of the deck. This set of decks, we're not going to have that problem. They're very clearly all tribal strategies, and this one more than others. The others actually have like kind of sub-nested themes, and we'll get to what like the sub-theme of each deck is when we get to some of the others. But I remember I was like literally making the handout for the Dragons deck, and I was like, the theme, Dragons. The secondary theme, ramp. It's like, you know, that's what I'm doing in my Dragon deck.
Yeah, especially because 5-color, like 5-color deck, like you need to make sure that you have your mana fixing, because it's like pretty hard to get 5 colors. So, you know, like I see there's like thing like Darksteel Ingot or Commander Sphere, or, you know, ways to find your different basic lands and that kind of thing. Oh, and of course, Fist of Suns. Love that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool for letting you pay 5 mana to cast, you know, your big dragons. Yeah, I mean, it's super straightforward theme wise, but it's just such a slam dunk theme. I mean, dragons are one of our most popular things in Magic. The only thing that was painful to me about doing this dragon deck is it meant we couldn't do the sliver deck, because I would also want to be 5 colors. So I was like, well, which are we going to do? And ultimately it was like, well, dragons are just so much more resonant than slivers are. So maybe someday we'll get the 5-color sliver deck. But this deck is pretty cool. And, you know, really, I think the theme is just like, it's obvious, but it's lovable. I don't really have like, this is a deck I just don't have that much to say about, because it's like, what's in here? dragons.
It's just super straightforward. I guess biggest notes that I'm seeing looking at the deck list is the curve is super high. Like, there's a small handful of rampy artifacts, but probably not enough for like the amount of high casting cost stuff that's in this deck. And like very easy to get color screwed in this deck. Like I see a lot of like double pips, you know, like white and red, and you know, there's a Niv Mizzet in here, you know, so like even if you do draw your Wooburg, there's probably something that you're not going to be able to cast, you know?
Yeah, it's got like all 5 of the vivid lands. It's really leaning heavily on, you know, hoping you can draw your mana fixing, a couple like mana fixing, like vivid style lands, get where you need to go. But yeah, the curve is rough. I think these days, if we were making this deck, Melissa, we would have more like, you know, talismans or, you know, signets or stuff like that in there, or, you know, just something to help bridge that early mana gap. Because you've just got what? I mean, Darksteel Ingot, Commander Sphere, Dreamstone Hedron doesn't fix your mana, right? I mean,
yep.
Wayfarer's Bauble and Armillary Sphere, it's pretty light. And then you've got, you know, in green, you've got Cultivate and Farseek. But yeah, it's...
Yeah, and the funny thing that I'm seeing here is like there's like Cultivate and Farseek and other green ramp stuff. 6 mountains, only 3 forests, you know? Like, I kind of get it because a lot of these dragons are double red, but it's like kind of awkward if you just like draw a whole bunch of mountains and you have these ramp spells in your hand and these red 5-drops, you know? Like, that can get a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
I think like a good direction with these types of decks is like pick 2 or 3 colors and play mostly cards of that and then do light splashes, like still play your Wooburg. But like, you know, if you're a base red-black deck, because like a lot of dragons are red-black, so I feel like that's like that would be a likely thing. For your white dragons, try and find only single pip white dragons, if that exists, which maybe it doesn't. I'm not sure.
Right, you could have done like base Jund or something like that, because that feels very dragony. And then,
yeah, for sure.
And then you have, you know, your white and your blue dragons on the periphery a little bit. So that might have been a different way to take this deck. With that said, I mean, I know it was really popular and Commander games do go long, so you often get to do your stuff anyway. But yeah, like Niv Mizzet is very ambitious in this deck.
Yeah, but you need Niv Mizzet. Like Niv Mizzet is such an iconic dragon.
Oh, for sure. You're not cutting Niv out of there. But this Niv Mizzet Draco Genius is so brutal because it not only costs you UURR to cast, and then once he's in play, it demands that you keep playing blue-red into him to like activate his ability.
Yeah.
And it's going to be tough.
But you know, maybe the deck didn't need Sunscorch Regent, which is a 5-mana double white pip dragon. You know, like that one is it has creature type dragon, but besides that, it's like, you know, I mean, it's a great commander card because it cares about opponents casting spells, but it might be a little bit ambitious for the mana base. Yeah.
We we put in a lot of the Tarkir block dragon stuff too to try and help out, make it feel more dragony, like the Atarka and the other Fate Reforged dragons that trigger when your dragons attack are in here, like Ojutai, Atarka, that kind of stuff. And that really made it stretch to all 5 colors, but there's only single pips. So like that's an example of one god that went well, I think. I agree. Where Sunscorch Region is like, well, it's fine, but the white is pretty brutal to get that out there. I agree. And triple R for Scourge of Valkis. Yeah. There's some mana challenges. It's funny because in playtesting, I mean, I played this deck a lot and I never felt like the mana problems were that strong, but you know, maybe that was just, could be the draws or, you know, whatever was happening at the time. If you played this deck, let us know what you think about the mana. Would you have heard that it was focused in? I don't know. I'm just going to rattle off a few of some of the unique new cards here that were just in this deck. Boneyard Scourge, Fortunate Few, which is a fun little sweeper. Kindred Discovery, Scale Lord Reckoner, Taigam Ojutai Master, who I think is the only non-dragon or like non-like accelerate non-dragon. There's like Dragon Speaker Shaman and stuff like that, but Taigam is a card that people actually asked for in Tarkir block that we didn't make. So we put one here, which I thought was kind of cool, even if it's a little off theme. Fractured Identity, and then Wasatora Nakoru Queen, who is the cat dragon, which I'm so glad we got to do the cat dragon here. That was really charming to me.
Is it in the cat deck too?
No.
That's so unfortunate.
It's funny how it actually started. It started because, originally, there's uncommons that go in multiple commander decks. And before, there ended up being a cycle of curses in these decks, which is what Brian Hawley ended up using to solve that. What I had in the design were creatures that had both types because the uncommons in a commander deck go in multiple decks. But to make that work in a tribal deck, you need to have multiple types. So I started running down our list and I was like, okay, vampire, wizard, easy, like vampire, cat, well, a little trickier, but we can make that work. I just started going down the list of all the options. But I got to cat dragon and I was just like, well, this is just not going to work. There's no way. What in the world is a cat dragon? So I walked over to Kelly Diggs' desk and I'm like, Kelly, so I started explaining my idea of like, we're going to do these dual creature types. And I'm like, wow, okay, we're going to need like, a wizard that's also a vampire and walking down them. And I get to cat dragon and I'm prepared for him to just be like, oh, okay, that's not going to work. And without missing a beat, I love Kelly so much. Without missing a beat, Kelly Diggs is like, oh yeah, from the Legends novel, DeTora, of course, there's a cat dragon. And I was like, what? How did you know that? It was already in Magic. And it's true, right? So in the Legends novel, there's just this character called DeTora, who's a cat dragon who heads up the Nakoru, which are a race of cat dragons. And they actually placate her by feeding her fish. That's a huge part of the story of the Legends novel. And she just existed in Magic already. So ironically, as I handed off the set, the entire like uncommon dual creature type thing got cut out of the set. But everyone loved the cat dragon so much. We just left the cat dragon in the dragon deck. It was just too adorable to say no to. And if you've ever seen that token, you know that you can't say no to a cat dragon.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I bet like that card just delighted old school players who know the old lore and have heard of that character before, too. Like it's always fun when we can like stick those like old school characters into newer sets.
Yeah, and this is like a hyper deep cut. So the people who recognize this one, like hats off to you. If you recognize this before anyone told you, let me know in the comments. Because I certainly did not. Kelly told me this and I thought he was joking. So I was like, that's bananas. Anyway, so yeah, this deck seems pretty cohesive and fun. Maybe has some mana challenges. It's a dragon deck for sure. Let's get to grading it. What are you going to give this? A through F, Melissa. What do you feel like the dragon deck?
Yeah, like I'm going to give it a high grade just for like resonance and the whole sometimes I'm color screwed. That doesn't bother me so much. Like games of Commander are pretty long. There's a solid amount of ramp, Like I think you will be able to like at least cast most of your spells, so I'm not going to like knock it too bad. So like maybe A- or B+ around there. But like I'm pretty high on this deck.
Yeah, I'm also pretty high on this deck. I think if like there's a part of me that's a little at war with itself right now, because part of me wants to give it a slight knock because it's lacking nuance. It really is just like, hey, here's a bunch of dragons and cards that say dragon on them. Go nuts. But on the other hand, if any deck is going to lack nuance, it should be the dragon deck. Like, you don't exactly need a lot of nuance for your dragon. So I think I'm going to give this one an A. I think it's pretty fun. It's full of like cool stuff. The Heart of Commander is just like slamming big dragons on the table and attacking people. Like I'm down with it. I'm cool. I agree the mana is a little rough, but
we could also knock points off for like the Eminence mechanic itself. But like, yeah. I don't know. We probably shouldn't do that. Did we knock points off the last one for partner?
Right? Not off the individual decks. I think Eminence will go into the final grade for the product at the very end is when we should discuss Eminence. But for the individual, but for the mechanic as a whole in terms of the deck, I think we're probably okay as is. So yeah, I'd say an A from me, and Melissa sounds like A-, B+. So that's what we'll rank this one. Thanks, by the way, to I think it's Gene OWO over on the Magic Reddit, who's been like actually putting all these into like a stacked hierarchy, like and keeping track of them. So shout out to them. You can go check out their inevitable post, which will hopefully be on the front page of the Magic subreddit, showing off how all of ours are ranked so far. It's been really cool watching that evolve. Okay, on to the next deck. So we started with dragons, slam dunk theme. That was like I think the top of the sheet that I handed out to you. The next one up is vampires with Vampiric Bloodlust. This one is kind of interesting in that one of the goals of this product I was handed was to find a way to bridge some of the tribes going into Ixalan. So Ixalan, if you remember, was the set after this. And so what we ended up doing was doing white, black, red vampires here, because that would let you play your Innistrad vampires with the brand new Ixalan vampires that were about to come out, which meant that you already would have a commander deck they could slot into, which I thought was a pretty cool idea.
Were they already out at the time in 2017? I feel like they were. Because like 2018 was Dominaria, so I believe 2017 was Ixalan. So maybe like they already existed at the time.
Well, these came out in August. The commander decks came out in August, so it was right before Ixalan hit.
Oh, got it. Okay, yeah, I'm right. It was fall. So yeah, it came out a little bit later.
Right, so it came out, you got your new vampire deck, you're like, oh, I wish I had some new vampires to put in. And then bam, Ixalan came out full of some cool new vampires for you to put in. All right, well here, I'll start going right into the commanders. I'll start with a name that strikes fear into Minia heart, Edgar Markov. If you do not know what Edgar Markov does, I will read it out to you, although I'm sure many of you know this one already. 3 red, black, white for a 4/4 legendary creature vampire knight. It's got Eminence. Whenever you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. So whenever you cast a vampire forever, you get a free 1/1. Also, he's got First Strike, Haste, and whenever he attacks, he puts a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Also tell a funny story, which is I was asking Kelly Diggs what red, black, white vampires existed in Magic's history. And he like cursed under his breath and he muttered Edgar Markov. And I was like, who? At the time, no one knew who this person was. He's like, Edgar Markov. And I'm like, who's that? He's like, oh, it's the progenitor of the vampire line on Innistrad, like the father of Sorin, all this stuff. And he's like, if I knew we were going to use him ever, I would have not named him Edgar. I would have given him a much cooler name. But here we are, stuck with now a name that was given to Edgar that is just like the name Edgar, which is not only on this very popular commander, but literally was a face of Crimson Vow set that just came out. So good reminder, name things always as if they're going to be used in the future because you never know when they will be.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's
Edgar,
so funny.
Very powerful commander. Melissa, talk to me about this.
All right. Well, kind of like the last commander that we talked about, the Dragon. This is another card that I don't really want to cast. Like this has a very powerful ability in the command zone where I'm not very interested in casting this card. However, unlike the other card, this one does have an immediate impact when you are ready to cast him because of the +1/+1 counter. This card is super, super strong. Eminence aside, it's not like over the line to me in terms of strength because it's very vulnerable to like removal and sweepers and that kind of thing, like things that are commonly played in Commander. So Eminence aside, like the design is pretty cool and powers up a tribe that could use the strength. But the Eminence is just like, just want to keep shaking my head at that.
Yeah, this is, the Eminence here is brutal. I'll talk about this maybe more later when we get to the Eminence section, but to me, I'm a lot more okay with the Eminence cards that make the cards you've already played better, make the cards that you're about to play stronger. But the ones that create extra material, like Edgar, are like definitely bad. I mean, I think when we get to Eminence, I'll get into more nuanced discussion. But just like the fact that this just spews out so many free 1/1s over the course of the game, is brutal. I mean, the way we got there is the vampire deck was very weak to sweepers and had a tough time rebuilding. So we're like, oh, we'll give it a tool that lets it rebuild really easily. But it's just way too easy to rebuild with Edgar. Way too easy. This card's brutal.
Big regrets there.
big regrets. This is on my 5 cards I regret making list. You can go watch that video if you want more. Anyway.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Next commander is Licia, Sanguine Tribune. I get questions all the time about if we'll ever see the plane this character's from. They seem to be like Roman inspired. She's 5 red, white, black for a 4/4 vampire soldier. Licia, Sanguine Tribune costs 1 less to cast for each 1 life you gained this turn. She's got First Strike. She's got Lifelink. Pay 5 life. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on Licia. Activate this ability only on your turn and only once each turn. So if you have some life, you can just pump it into her every turn to make her larger. And she's got lifelink, so she pays that life out to you pretty easily. Thoughts on Licia?
Let's see. So I like the cost reduction for gaining life. That's a worthwhile cost reduction to build towards. So that's pretty cool. But as for like what the card does when it's in play, I think it's like a little bit boring. It's a little bit self-solving. Like it has lifelink, so you already have the way to gain life on it naturally. So what's to stopping you from paying 5 life every turn? It's not like really very interesting of a decision. You're just going to do it because you're just gaining more and more life every turn with it, So yeah, I guess not the most exciting design to me. Could have been a lot cooler.
And once you have your 7/7 First Strike Lifelinker, which it just comes in as, it's like people aren't going to be blocking you very profitably, so you're just going to gain that life back every single turn, So yeah, I agree with you that I think that rate just looks like maybe it's wrong. If it was less life for a single counter or something, maybe it wouldn't get so big and out of hand as quickly. But yeah, that looks a little on the rough side. Also note that so every deck's 3 commanders, the model that we used, is the front-facing commander ties into the theme really closely. So Edgar, Dragon, the Eminence commanders, very loudly vampire, very loudly dragons. The secondary commander looks at the sub-theme of the deck. In this case, there's a mini life gain theme going on in the vampires deck, because a lot of them have life links with their cards like Sanguine Bond and so on. Licia ties into that theme. And then the third commander is just like out of left field, like do something different. Like, hey, maybe you don't like the theme of this deck. Maybe you don't want to play your tribal deck, whatever. Here's a weirdo commander that's in this theme you can do something else with. So in the dragon deck, it's got the Year Dragon as the face. You've got Ramos as the second in line because he's like, it's a 5-color Matters deck. And then there's Okagachi as the weirdo. In this deck, you've got Edgar as the face, Licia as the life gain one, and then the weirdo of the bunch is Mathas, Fiend Seeker. Red, white, black, 3/3 legendary creature vampire. He's got menace. At the beginning of your end step, put a bounty counter on target creature an opponent controls. For as long as that creature has a bounty counter on it, it has, when this creature dies, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life. So you hand out bounty counters to their creatures, and when they die, their opponents reap the rewards. It's actually, fun fact, not the first card to use bounty counters. There's like a Mirage card, and then no uses bounty counters, so there's maybe some fun interplay there. My idea for this was Blade. I was like, what if we made the Blade vampire? Of like, he's a vampire who hunts other vampires, you know? This card's playtest name was Van Sengiersing. So, there's a lot of fun stuff to do there. Mathas Fiend Seeker, thoughts on this card, Melissa?
I think it's a pretty sweet card. There's not really too much negative for me to say about it, to be honest. It's like a card that is cool in multiplayer because you can target different threats and it gains you some value if you're actively working on killing the stuff. Sometimes the creatures will die naturally in combat, so overall a pretty cool card. And funny story, so like there's another card that uses bounty counters, right? In a more recent set in Ikoria, it's Shovel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like they're practically the same card. Right? But like at the time I was only working on Standard and Limited, as were like all the other members of my team, and we had no idea this card existed. So like every once in a while somebody would say, oh, that's just Mathas. And we're like, what are you talking about? Or like we would say, we would, make suggestions for changes or whatever. And then, some outside person would be like, oh, that just compares unfavorably to Mathas. And we're like, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. And then like I went and read this card and I was like, oh my God, they're the same card. Why are we just making the same card? But like we ended up making it anyway because we really liked how it played in Standard. It was just a fun card. And it was in a different color identity. So we thought that like some, players would have use for the same effect on a different color identity. So still made it, but a little weird.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. I mean, I think there's something to be said too for Standard. Just got to do what's right for Standard, and sometimes some legends will overlap, and that's how it works. But I do think it's a fun effect. I mean, I think if anything, Mathas is probably a little on the weak side, but it's a pretty fun thing to do. So, so I dig this card.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy
considering we did make the same card, but -1 mana and 3 life instead of 2 life, so we made it a little bit stronger, and. Even that didn't really like show up a ton in that Standard format, which admittedly had other problems, but we can move on.
Yeah, we can move on. Agreed. I mean, also for me, just Mathas giving everyone else a card, just, it's just a lot weaker than just one player card, So,
I didn't actually consider the each opponent thing on this actually, because I had Shovel on my mind when we were talking about this, but yeah, that is an interesting point. This does have some political elements to it, which makes it like overall cooler, I think.
Right. It is fun to be like, hey, I'll put the bounty counter on your creature, Melissa, and then Mark, hey, just kill Melissa's creature. You'll get a free card
out of it.
Right?
Yeah.
How can you say no? So
very cool.
You can argue if that's upside or downside, I guess. So that's a neat card. So once again, I mean, this deck is pretty on theme. It's got a lot of vampires. It's got some life gain, life loss stuff going on. It's got cards like Sanguine Bond hanging out in here. You got ways to spend life as well. You've got your Skeletal Scrying. You've got Well of Lost Dreams as a thing that you can fuel your mana into to draw cards when you gain life. And then there's plenty of vampire tribal stuff. I do remember when I was working on this deck, the biggest problem was always, and something I was going to bring up to you, Melissa, I was curious on your take about, it was always come out of the gates really fast, right? Vampires low to the ground. It's generally a smaller tribe. So it came out of the gates fast and was very good at killing one player, but then had a really hard time winning the game. You would kill someone, you'd spend some resources and kill somebody, and that was all great. But then someone casts a sweeper and you're out of resources and you have the blue control deck surging ahead or whatever. And this deck was having trouble. Do you view in a pre-con biodome, like if you're looking at the four decks together, do you view a deck like that as a good thing to have, as a problem if the deck has trouble winning and it'll kill someone fast? Like, where do you sit? Because games got to end, but like, how do you feel about that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that is kind of a problem in biodome play. It just like the vampire player just like, I don't like it when they feel like they have no shot of winning. And like, that is going to be pretty common with this deck. And funny story, I actually had a very similar experience when I was designing the Brawl decks. So the Brawl decks also had a Mardu aggressive deck. It was the Knight deck. It was Sir Gwyn, which you all may remember. It had a very similar problem. And I remember actually talking to Brian, the lead developer of this product, about the problem I was having. I was like, hey, this deck cannot win. Like, it can have some aggro and it can maybe kill one person, but it just cannot win. And he was like telling me about how, I had this exact experience, and like he was giving me some advice and stuff. And I did not want that to be true. So I did add some new cards to the Brawl decks that could come back very hard after a sweeper. Like, one of them is an enchantment that for 7 mana you can sacrifice it and return all of your knights to play as a way to, like, you're swept, you're getting just everything back, And I really wanted to put cards like that in the product so the player could actually win the game. And I felt like that direction was pretty good because, like, the deck could win. It didn't, like, I think it didn't have the best win percentage of the 4, but it could hold its own and it could win. And fun story, I'm pretty sure that deck did actually win the game nights.
Ooh,
probably
nice.
Because of that one enchantment I was telling you about. Actually, like, that probably did it. Like, it was a long time ago, so I don't exactly remember. I'm sure somebody in the comments can tell me, but I'm pretty sure Josh won that game with the Knight deck.
I'm sure he did some politics behind the scenes too. That guy, every time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Some back deals. Yeah, I mean, I remember people knocking the Sir Gwyn deck, I think, when it was shown off, but I think it just requires a different style of play. You have to know, like, when not to overextend, all that kind of stuff.
You did have to play like super tight to win with it. It was still very hard to win, but I felt like it could win.
Yeah, I definitely remember with this deck, like, I would play and I'd like narrowly grind out a win sometimes. And then you'd have a playtest of less experienced players. People just would dump their hand and, like, their stuff would get swept away. So it's a different kind of play. And it's tough. It's really tough with these cheaper tribes that don't have built-in resiliency in their tribe normally. Like zombies, it's a small to the ground tribe, sure, but you can bring stuff back really easily. Like, there's a lot of recursion mechanics. Vampires are not really known for that as much. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting discussion. If you have any thoughts in the chat about if you like that kind of thing or not, you can let me know in the comments down below. I'll walk through the new cards, just the names of some of the new cards here. You got Bloodsworn Steward, Crimson Honor Guard, Disrupt Decorum. That's a sweet card to come out of this deck. Keru Mind Eater, Kindred Boon, Kindred Charge, New Blood, which I made a fun little short about somewhere that if I'm clever, I'll link right here. And if I forget, then go find it on my channel. Patron of the Vein, and a little card called Teferi's Protection. Just some little card.
I didn't realize that one was in here.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's funny. The story of Teferi's Protection is basically, I've told this a few times now, so if you know this one, I'm sorry, but I do always love the story, is I had like 5 minutes before a meeting and I needed to type in a card so I could print out the file or whatever. I had this white hole and I was like, okay, what would a vampire do? They would turn into a bat. So I made this card called Turn Into Smoke or Vanish Into Smoke. And it was just like, all your stuff phases out or flickers out for the turn and you get it back next turn. I typed it in the file. I brought it to the meeting and everyone loved it. So I was like, wow, I didn't expect this 5-minute card design to stick, but sweet. Everyone really liked it. And so I kept it in. And then one day, Kelly Diggs is like, Gavin, I think I have a better concept for your card than turning into smoke. And I'm like, it's got to be really good, Kelly, because like vampires vanishing into smoke, like it's kind of a pretty iconic thing. And he was like, what about Teferi phasing out Jal Fear? And I was like, all right, it's pretty good. Not gonna argue with Teferi phasing out Jal Fear. And I'm really glad we did because the card is so iconic that having Teferi's name on it is just like an extra layer of awesome. So,
yeah, like as a standalone card, this card is awesome. I will say it doesn't make a ton of sense in a vampire deck specifically, but like it is now a beloved card, and like I'm really glad it got that concept over the vampire one because like now it just makes it even more beloved, especially for like Teferi fans. And this card is like super heavily played, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say
very
that
cool.
with the concept change, that it doesn't make any sense in this deck. It's like, what is this random Teferi card doing here? But gameplay wise, it does, because if the deck is weak to sweepers, phasing out all your stuff is like a really good way to, heroic intervention, against a sweeper or something like that. So there's a bit of play there. But other than that, low to the ground. You've got, all kinds of vampires from throughout Magic's history. Thoughts on this deck, Melissa? What would you give this one for a grade?
Like probably lower than the dragon deck, to be honest. Like vampires are a cool and iconic tribe, but like we talked about how the deck is overall a little bit weaker, although like I'm not going to knock it too much because Edgar Markov is one of the most beloved cards for tribal decks and super popular and widely played and stuff. So there's a lot going for this deck for sure. But I think I want to rate it lower than the dragon deck. So we'll go with a B. All right.
B. Yeah.
B it is.
I was thinking like B minus. I guess I'll settle on B minus. It's pretty close for me. The theme is really nice, which is great. I love like the tie-in of Ixalan and Innistrad vampires. That's cool. A lot of the individual cards are pretty awesome. Like I like Mathas. I like the Kindred cards here are cool. Whatever. But I'm gonna knock it because even Eminence aside, like the Eminence mechanic, we'll talk about more later. But I think Edgar is just such a mistake. I gotta knock this deck a little bit for it. And the low to the ground nature of vampires is just so hard to make work in Commander that this deck had like almost a bit of a flawed premise. It's workable. It ended up working. But if you look at like the Crimson Vow vampires deck, it went in a way different direction than this deck did. It has a lot of bigger vampires and stuff like that. So I think I'll give it a B minus. It's close, B minus, somewhere in there for me though. It's still a solid deck though.
I will say that Commander designers have come a long way since this time, and like learning more about, hey, what makes a functional Commander deck? Like the need for sweepers, the need for interaction, the need for card advantage. Where like, I mean, I don't know what the designers were thinking back then, so I'm kind of only guessing here, but like it just seems like, oh, we're doing Vampire Tribal, let's throw all the strongest vampires into one deck and call it a day kind of thing. Like I'm not saying that was definitely the case, but like you can kind of see like there's not much in the way of card advantage in the deck, Also back then we did not have the technology of red impulsive draw, which was, great technology to use for red decks as a way to gain card advantage, and I love it. Which I imagine was something that was used a ton of in the Vow deck, right? So just like less options for like color pie specific stuff, and just like less knowledge of what makes for a functional Commander deck back then.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. I guess there is Outpost Siege here as like the one impulsive draw kind of thing going on. Yeah. But we certainly didn't have as much of it.
They clearly thought about it, but there were less options.
Yeah, it's like here's the one that we got.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, as the designer, I can say that definitely there was a lot of just like, oh, this is a sweet vampire, we'll put it in here. And then some life gain, life loss stuff. So yeah, it's a cool package. But I think to your point, Melissa, we've gotten a lot better about identifying the challenging themes before we even try them. Like back when I started this, I didn't really have the thinking to be like, this is going to be a challenging theme to develop because I just hadn't done this enough times. But now I'm having at the point, and this just happens as you're a game designer and you do it more and more, you can see the problems before you even go down that path, right? Because once you're a few months down the path of designing a Commander deck, if you're halfway through the process or something, at some point you're like, I can't just switch to another theme. There's not enough time to iterate on all the cards, and all the playtesting data is going to be wrong and whatever. So you kind of just got to make it work with the situation you're in at that time. Where now it's like I just know to not even like go down that path in the first place, or know that if I do, like all of the new cards are going to be, I need to focus on this thing or what have you. So, I think we learn a lot as we design. Okay. Going into the third deck, we've got Feline Ferocity. Meow. It's time for the cat deck here. So this is green, white cats. I've got some fun stories to tell about this one, that's for sure. But first we'll go through the commanders. The front-facing commander for this one is Erebo, Roar of the World. 3 green white for a 5/5 cat avatar. Eminence. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if Erebo, Roar of the World is in the command zone or on the battlefield, another target cat you control gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So you play a turn 1 cat, turn 2, you can give it +3/+3 in attack, which is kind of cool, and just make sure you can keep attacking throughout the game. Its static text, while it's actually in play, whenever another cat you control attacks, you may pay 1 green-white. If you do, it gains trample and gets +X until end of turn, where X is its power. So you can do that to all your cats for as many times you want to spend 1 green-white, which is pretty cool. Thoughts on Erebos, Melissa?
All right. So first, unlike the previous 2 cards we looked at, I actually want to cast this card. The Eminence ability is relevant, but it's not so strong where I want to keep it in the command zone forever. And I think this being in play is like a lot of times going to be a stronger effect than keeping it in the command zone. So I like that about it already. Cats are fun. It's a beloved tribe. This ability doesn't necessarily strike me as a great commander card. Like, it's all about combat. And cats are generally kind of small. So, like, I want to use this triggered ability on itself, but it says another, which makes sense because this thing is huge. And a 10/10 trample might be a little bit more frustrating than we want, but I just think it's probably a bit on the weak side for a cat tribal deck. It probably could have done something else to like make the deck just a more functional commander deck.
Yeah, I definitely wish it had, I think, been a little cheaper to cast, just because it is so often a card used. It's 5 mana, 5/5 that you have to spend more mana into to do anything. It's a pretty tough sell for casting. But I think a lot about this card is sweet. I also think that in terms of Eminence effects, +3/+3, like a giant growth on the cat, which is a pretty narrow tribe, is a lot more reasonable than like a free creature every time you play a vampire. That helps. That helps a little bit too. I think Erebos is like one of the best Eminence designs of the product, and a cool commander to head up this deck. The next commander is Nazan, Revered Bladesmith, 4 green-white for a 5/4 cat artificer. When Nazan, Revered Bladesmith enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment card and reveal it. Okay. If you reveal a card named Hammer of Nazan this way, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. And whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you may tap target creature defending player controls. You might wonder, dear listener, what does Hammer of Nazan do? It's a 4 mana cost artifact. It's a legendary artifact, in fact. It's an equipment. Whenever Hammer of Nazan or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. So it lets all your equipment snap on, which is pretty slick. And the equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has indestructible. So great way to help give you some resilience with an equipped cost of 4. Thoughts on the Nazan package?
I think I like it. First I will say it's very expensive. Green white, I guess green has enough ramp where maybe it's not as expensive as it seems. But I always think cards that reference other cards are pretty neat. So I've never heard of this equipment that it's searching for. So I went and read it and I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. All right. I'm into that. And I like that it encourages you to get sort of a weaker equipment, an expensive equipment rather than just something that will kind of end the game on the spot, Let's see. So I think I like it. It's pretty cool. Do I want to say anything else? It looks like a solid way to close out games. Aggro decks and commanders struggle pretty bad to close out games, but this just lets you get blockers out of the way pretty quickly. So pretty cool design overall.
Yeah, in general, I like it. I'll say the one thing that I dislike a little bit is for a precon, we don't do tutors often. So this is asking you to go through and read a bunch of equipment on your commander, which is it's fine for normal Magic. Just you buy a precon, you play your first game, you play this on 6 mana, and it's okay, everyone pause. I got to go read through all my equipment. Fortunately, though, it's pretty directional, and that you want to go find the Hammer of Nazan first. So that actually helps shortcut that a little bit, I think. And you are getting, the hammer and the creature for 6 mana. So I think that this design is cool. A fun little design story about it is Mark Gottlieb actually pitched this card originally to me as a weapon you'd put in the command zone with this thing. So you would have actually Nazan and his hammer in the command zone. It didn't work out, so we just had him tutor for it. But I still have always had this funny idea of like getting an equipment into your command zone. So maybe someday. We got a vehicle with a Neon Kamigawa, so anything is possible.
That is a good point about tutoring, especially when you first pick up and pilot the deck for the first time. But like for me, I'm a little bit more tolerant of tutoring for specific things. Like this one only gets equipment, so like you're probably not going to have that many equipment in the deck. But yeah, it is like pretty time consuming when you're, when you have to say, hey, let me stop the game for a second and look through my deck. But like, it's not like Diabolic Tutor or, you're not searching your whole deck like that. That is a lot more troublesome, I think. Like you're going to just be there forever.
Well, and speaking of equipment, there are 14 equipment in the deck because the sub-theme of this deck, as you can pick up from Nizan, is equipment. Mark Galli basically honed in that cats and equipment actually had kind of a natural pairing thanks to Mirrodin. Cards like Raksha, Golden Cub had some equipment stuff going on. So I guess I'll finish out the next card, then I'll get into Mark's pitch. I think it's a kind of an interesting design story. But the third card here is Miri, Weatherlight Duelist. One thing I talked with Kelly Diggs about was, could we redo some fan favorite characters that didn't get a great card the first time around? Miri, Cat Warrior, 1 GG, 2/3 Vigilance,
Forest Walk.
First Strike, Forest Walk, I think.
Not exactly I remember it had Forest Walk.
Yeah. So we can do better. Let's make a cool new version of
the
Miri.
Exodus card.
Yeah, so we did. My goal was to eventually get all the Weatherlight crew made again. 1 green-white for a 3/2 Cat Warrior. She's got First Strike. Whenever Miri Weatherlight Duelist attacks, each opponent can't block with more than 1 creature this combat. As long as Miri Weatherlight Duelist is tapped, no more than 1 creature can attack you each combat. So it's really strong. If you attack with Miri, only 1 creature can block. So if they have 8 creatures, doesn't matter. You attack with all your stuff, only 1 thing can block. So it's an amazing kind of falter effect just on your commander.
Yeah.
And then locking them down from attacking you a bunch on the receiving end is also pretty powerful.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, this card is powerful and it also looks super fun. It's defensive. It's a good way of getting through. So yeah, I think this card it's good. I like it. Pretty sweet.
The second half can be a little stacksy sometimes. I've seen people try and silent arbiter their opponents out by keeping their Miri safe, only allowing 1 creature to attack them. But yeah, in general, I think this card is pretty cool. And it incentivizes attacking.
It's a 2 toughness creature. It's like pretty vulnerable. Also, you're going to have a hard time attacking if they only have like big creatures, right? Because then like the blocks are easy. So like I think there's enough counterplay where it's like a lot less frustrating than like actual silent arbiter or something like a ghostly prison or something.
That's why you got to equip it up so it'll get through. So speaking of equipment, yeah, basically, so I'm kind of going through the decks. I was debating what order to go through them, and I'm going through them in the order they fell into place for us. So dragons was like the clear champion of every metric. It's like, gotta do dragons. Vampires was, okay, let's tie it into Ixalan. We're gonna do like either zombies to tie into Amonkhet or to tie Amonkhet and Innistrad together, or vampires to tie Ixalan and Innistrad together. So we ended up going with that. So we kind of had like our big lovable tribe, our small lovable tribe. I had goals left for the next 2 decks. I'll get to what the 4th goal is in a second, but the 3rd goal I had was we should do 1 tribe that nobody is expecting. Like that is just like a totally out of left field. This is not a tribe people play with. Now, right now in the year 2022, cats seem like a strange choice for that because we've actually had a lot of cat tribal cards. And in fact, as I was working on this deck, what I didn't know at the time, because I was too busy working on this, is Dave Humphreys was making cat tribal cards in Amonkhet, which actually ended up working out great, and they were able to like synergize together, which is cool. But at the time, cats were not big. So Mark Gottlieb, I discounted cats as one of our options, but Mark believed in them, was like, hey, let me give them a try, and made a deck list. And I'll admit, I did not have a lot of faith in it initially, but props to him. Like, he refined the deck list, came up with some ideas, and made it work. And his pitch to me also, on top of like, hey, I think I can make this work. And Mark is a great designer, so he was able to. His pitch to me was, Gavin, in the entire world, among all humans, is there anything more popular than cats? Just anything. Is there something more popular than cats around the world? And to this day, like, I don't know what the answer to that question is. Obviously, no one can ever know for sure what the answer to that question is. But cats have to be at least on the list of most popular things in the entire world, period, end. So compelling reason to do cat stuff. So I was pretty happy we got to do this one here. And And there were a lot of fun cards we got to make. Hungry Lynx in particular is Mark's like, one day he was looking at his own cats at home. And he's like, Magic's got like all these fierce like sword cats. But really like it's a cute little kitten. So, you know, that's where that card came from. So all kinds of fun stories like that. It was definitely a challenge to make the theme work, though, given that weren't that many cats at the time and almost no cat tribal cards. So this is another one that I'm glad we did it. Like, I am glad we did the cat deck. But it was, when you look through this deck list, which we'll kind of go down right now, we're stretching. We're definitely stretching a little bit. Right? You've got Sunspear Shikari, which is a grizzly bear that gets first strike and lifelink if it's equipped. Right? You've got just kind of a who's who of cats from throughout history. You know, Deadit, Ojane, and Befrava. I
do remember all the Mirrodin stuff, though.
Yep.
With the equipment. Like, that's... At the time, if you said, what do cats do? I probably would have, like, gotten to that space. Because I do remember, like, playing a lot of them in Mirrodin Limited. And Kemba being quite the bomb.
Yeah, Kemba and Scars and Mirrodin was very good. And then also Rockshaw Golden Cub was really, really strong, too, as an equipment lord. I guess, it's, once again, kind of straightforward. You've got a bunch of equipment. You got a bunch of cats. You want to suit up your cats and attack. Cats and things and their toys. You know how cats are, always knocking over your stuff. Anything in this deck that jumps out to you, looking through the cards and the reprints and everything else here?
I love seeing White Sun's Zenith, which we used to call Cat Sun's Zenith. Yeah, let's see if I have any comments on that. So far, everything seems just very straightforward. You have equipment. Some of the equipment is super inefficient, but you can snap it on by various things, so maybe it's fine. I see, like, Herald's Horn looks really cool. I don't know if that was new to this product or not, but I imagine it would be in most of the decks. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
It was in 2 of the 4 decks, I think.
Yep. Ramp Sweepers.
One interesting thing about this deck is, one thing you have to think about when you're designing decks is like the Biodome experience. We call the Biodome like all 4 decks when you play them against each other. And we found this deck was actually really weak to flyers, which makes sense. It's green-white cats. Well, There's a problem because Dragons is one of the other decks in the environment. So we worked on a lot of ways to help this deck fight off against flyers, because otherwise the game's played out the same every time of the Dragons deck attacks the Cats deck a bunch early. So we added in some things to help have reach, like there's or ways to kill off flying creatures, all the way down to Crushing Vines, which is one of the looser cards in the set, I'll admit, but 3 mana, destroy an artifact or a creature with flying. It's like even the level we went down to. And just, some of the new cats have reach. Kasali Slingers, this 5 mana, 3/5 reach, that whenever it's Aura Shards, whenever you play this or a cat, you destroy an artifact or enchantment. Which is an extra way to block some of these flying creatures. But
this deck could also use the Teferi's protection, actually.
Yeah, it definitely could.
It's like, I am going to kill you with all these flyers. All right, well, I'm not dead, and also my stuff is safe.
In retrospect, it probably made more sense to put it in this deck too, especially if we knew how popular the card was going to be. But I digress. When it comes to unique new cards, we've got Alms Collector, Ballin, Wandering Knight, Bloodforged Battle Axe, one that I've always loved, Hammer of Dazan, I mentioned before, Kindred Summons, Kasali Slingers, Traverse the Outlands, Hungry Lynx, and Stalking Leonin. I'll kind of tell a fun story here. So Stalking Leonin is 2 and a white for a 3/3 cat archer. When Stalking Leonin enters the battlefield, secretly choose an opponent. Reveal the player you chose, exile the target creature that's attacking you if it's controlled by the chosen player. Activate only once. What's going on here? So a fun story about this is early on in the design process, when we were trying to come up with a mechanic for the set, we came up with this idea, maybe Ben or Mark, it might have been Mark, came up with this mechanic called Vendetta. And the cards with Vendetta all secretly chose an opponent when they came into play, and then could reveal their Vendetta thing once per game to do, if that person was doing something mean to you. And then you would get to do something, just exactly like Stalking Leonin here. However, as we designed the cards, we learned that there are basically only 2 good designs. Like maybe there were a couple more if we pushed it, but there are only 2. So we didn't cycle it out. And we put Stalking Leonin in this set. And then the other design we ended up putting in Commander 2018, which I guess we'll get to next time. But yeah, Stalking Leonin was actually originally a whole mechanic in the set, which is kind of a fun fact.
That's super interesting. Yeah, like I have a couple comments about this card and or mechanics or whatever.
Yeah.
Super cool in multiplayer. Really, I guess, miserable. Is that the word I want to use? In 1v1. And sometimes you're going to play a 1v1 commander game, right? And this card is just like, I mean, it functions, but it's not interesting. And it's also kind of miserable, right? Because obviously there's only one choice, your one opponent. And like this particular design, having the onboard, I get to kill your thing for free if you attack me, is pretty frustrating. You know, unlike something like, you know, like the seals, which you sacrifice to do the effect, you know, at least then you can be like, okay, I'm ready to attack. I know you have the Seal of Doom, but I need to get it off the board. But this one is like, no, you just get it for free and you still get to keep your creature. So it's like a little more frustrating, I think. And I remember like, so if these viewers play Magic Online, you might be familiar with like the cubes we do. And I remember one cube submission, somebody submitted this card, Stalking Leonin. And when I was on Play Design, part of our job was to play test the cubes and give feedback and stuff. And I remember, like, I had never seen this card before. So I was like, Commander card, cool. I'll play it and see what happens. And I was like, oh, wow, this card is not ideal for Cube, I don't think. Is, you know, because it's just like, it's not interesting. It's not, you're not secretly choosing anything. Like, so that the card is lying to you.
You know, like, yeah.
Yeah, but like, the more problematic thing is like, is the onboard, I am ready to kill your thing at a moment's notice. You know,
right.
So
and then with
not a very
stuff
fun
like
effect.
That, you like blink it and it just resets, right? So that's also something you gotta be careful about.
But super fun in multiplayer. Great multiplayer card for sure. But like anytime there's a card like this, I always kind of think about, what if you're playing 1v1? Is that ideal? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's possible that, you know, there could have been a different version maybe that did work in one-on-one, but for a commander product, you gotta ultimately, in my opinion, make the card that's right for the commander set, which is multiplayer focused. But I do agree that that is a not great one-on-one experience. I wouldn't even call it miserable. I would just call it it's like a lot of words for a payoff that's like, okay, none of the words I read actually mattered in one-on-one play. You know, it's just really what it does is.
But the effect is miserable.
But the effect is miserable. And yeah, this one in particular, the effect is miserable in one-on-one. I agree. So is the red one, frankly, but that one's a 6-mana card, so we'll get to that next time.
There was another example of this if you want to go into the weeds, but I understand if you don't.
Go into the weeds. I'd love it.
All right.
The listeners love the weeds. I'm sure everyone out there loves the weeds.
So
if you love the weeds, let us know.
Yeah. Let us know if you love the weeds. But like, I noticed, like, I think we went into the weeds a lot during our first episode or two, and they went very, very long. And lately, we've been not going as much into the weeds, but I guess we can for now. So we're working on MH2 Limited. There was another example of a card like this that was just really miserable to play against. And it's a commander card, and it's a white card that you sacrifice to kill an attacking creature, soul snare, yeah. That's the one, yep. And it was in a really weird spot because the Modern team really wanted this effect for Modern, and it was miserable and limited, so we made it rare. But it wasn't really, like, worthy of a rare for like what it did, you know, because it was just a removal spell, but it was so unfun and limited that it was just really hard to justify at uncommon. So it was like a really tough spot for us because like the Modern team was like, no, we really want this card for Enchantress. We think it'll be like a positive addition to the Enchantress deck. So they really wanted the card, but it was like, is it worth like making the miserable limited experience? And like we did not like playing against this card. I remember.
What do you think the difference is? I mean, I know, of course, Seal of Doom is not exactly like a great card we want to print all the time anyway. Like it's an onboard removal spell. But what do you think the difference is between a Seal of Doom and Soul Snare for you?
Well, I think they're both like miserable, but let me go look up the exact wording on Soul Snare. So
is it that Soul Snare, like you just feel worse because you don't want to attack because like, attacking was what's going to kill your thing, so it stymies the game?
Oh, right, yeah. This only kills an attacker. Yeah, so this just it just makes you not want to attack. And like, does Doomblade do that? Not really. They're going to do it anyway. But this one just tells you not to attack. Mm-hmm. Like maybe they'll have a shields down moment and tap out, and they'll give you the window to attack or whatever. But this is just saying, hey, if you attack me, your creature is dying. Unlike Doomblade, where it's dying anyway. Right. You know? So you just have to hope that they use it on the wrong thing.
It's a really interesting mix, because in Commander, we call these rattlesnake cards, right? Where you play a card and you're like, don't attack me, attack somebody else. And they play great. It's like awesome to have this around in Commander, because like it tells people to go turn their attention somewhere else. And so it's a very interesting tension, right? Between what's good in one-on-one play versus what's good in Commander play can be quite different. And knowing how you're designing for the two is a big deal.
Yeah, this is a great Commander card. Like super fun there for sure.
So went through the new cards, talked about the deck a little bit. Thoughts on the deck's grade? What are you going to give it, Melissa?
Okay, let's see. So far I've done Dragons A-, and the Vampires B. Where does this one fall for me? I think this deck is cooler than the Vampire deck, actually. Like, equipment's fun. This is just doing generally fun things. Yes, I think I do like it better than the Vampire deck. So we'll go B+.
Yeah, I have this at B or B+, so it's pretty close to the line for me. It's got a good, nice theme. It's got it'll play well, right? You're equipping your stuff up, you're attacking. It's going to play pretty honestly. The place where I ding it a little bit, I would say, is that there is a tiny. I still would have done the deck. I think there's a bit of a design challenge here, because okay, you're going to do cats. Cats definitely don't have enough cards to be able to build a commander deck out at this point. So that means you're going to have to make a bunch of new cats. Okay, sure. But if your theme is cats and equipment, that means you're also going to need to make new equipment for your cats to hold. So that's going to eat up, like, equipment and cats are both going to pull you in a direction from a design perspective to like feed them both tons of new cards, when really you just want to like drop it on the cats. And looking at the new cards in this deck, there's only a few new equipment. Bloodforged Battle Axe is one. Hammer of Nazan, which goes with the Face Commander, is one. Heirloom Blade is another. But so the equipment theme does make sense with the existing cats, but if we had known how many cats are coming down the pipeline, this could have been a lot easier to do a year or 2 years later. With that said, I am glad we did it. I think it's an awesome theme. I think that was a pretty cool deck, a pretty novel green-white deck of like green-white equipment instead of like red-white equipment or something. So yeah, I guess I'm leaning on B+ for this one. It's a cool deck. It's a really cool deck.
I actually wasn't sure if like the cats were made, like there were more cat tribal card made in the future because of the popularity of this deck. Like for example, like Modern Horizons had some cat stuff as well. But I didn't know the timeline, so like I wasn't sure if it was like, oh, this cat deck was super popular, let's do more cat tribal. Do you know?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the cat deck was among the more popular decks. I mean, the least popular deck is the next one that we'll get to. And then Dragons was the most popular deck. And then depending where you were, it was like the cats or the vampires deck was the next most popular. But there were a lot of people that did not play Commander or were really attracted to the cats deck because it was so different and something so unique. And I think that this was happening around the same time Amonkhet was happening. So there was like just this huge upsurge for cats. We saw how popular they were. And that's why I think we've started doing more of them. And cats are awesome. So, what's not the world? Yeah. Okay. Then finally, fourth deck, Arcane Wizardry. This is a blue, red, black wizard tribal deck. And so, like I said, my heuristics were slam dunk tribe everyone loves, dragons. Fits this like goal of lining up with our upcoming set, vampires. Tribe no one expects, cats. What I wanted with the last deck was a deck for people who don't buy into the tribalness of the set. They're like, oh, well, I'm not really into playing with this creature type matter stuff. So I wanted to give them a deck that still had a creature type that they cared about, but what was more of a traditional Magic deck. So this is the control deck of the bunch. And yes, there's plenty of wizard matter stuff going on here, but there's a lot of just normal control elements, your sweepers and so on and so forth. It also has a bit of a spells theme as well to it. So commanders, the front facing commander here is Anala, Archmage Ritualist. Here's what Anala does. 2 black, blue, red, 4/5 human wizard, Eminence. Take a deep breath. Here we go. Whenever another non-token wizard enters the battlefield under your control, if Anala Archmage Ritualist is in the command zone or on the battlefield, you may pay 1. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that wizard. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So all the wizards you play have 1 to heat shimmer them, basically. You can also tap 5 untapped wizards you control. Target player loses 7 life. Thoughts on this, Melissa?
All right. Well, I think this Eminence design is like the worst, as like the worst design of the bunch, because you are getting like maybe well over a card's worth of value for a very cheap cost in your command zone. So again, like the first 2 we talked about, I don't really want to cast this card. Like this card does not look powerful to me while it's on the battlefield. So you're playing it for its Eminence ability. And there's a lot of powerful wizards with ETBs out there that are giving you more than a card, and you're getting that card for only 1 mana, you know? So this just looks like, I don't want to use the word like inappropriate, but like, I don't think this is a good design. It's pretty inappropriate, you know what I'm saying, you know?
I feel like we should get, I don't want to use the word inappropriate on a t-shirt. That's like our like t-shirt for the show, right?
Yeah, or like, I don't want to use the word miserable. Like, you know, I say that, but you know exactly what I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, it means inappropriate and miserable. I mean, so Anala, to me, I mean, Edgar Markov is the strongest of all these Eminence commanders, in my opinion, but by a wide margin. But when it comes to just pure design, like looking at design, I think I agree. Anala is by far the worst designed and the most powerful in like a what it's doing sense. Like making a lot of tokens is powerful because you can pump up your tokens and like whatever. And, but you still play a fair strategy when you do it. With Anala, the stuff you're going to do with this is never fair. You're just like copying Unreal ETBs, or there's even, it's not in this deck list, but an infinite turns combo with a Wanderwine Prophet, which is which you can go infinite with. So yeah, I remember seeing, so this card was made after I handed the set off. And I remember seeing the card and being like, there's no way we can make this. And, then we did. And ultimately, ultimately this card has not been like a totally bananas thing to do in Commander, which is great, but it's one of those cards that has so much potential for being a problem that I'm not a huge fan of it. Like I said, you're just never going to do anything fair with this. It's going to give you so much value, and just do broken stuff. I'll also mention that, so all that about the Eminence ability. Then the tap 5 untapped wizards you control thing. The deck just, as we'll get into maybe in a little bit, had trouble closing the game. So we just kind of put something on there so it could actually win a game of Magic.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if you were to ask me why is that on there, that is what I would assume. It was like, all right, well, it looks like the wizards were a little bit too weak and the games weren't ending, so they added this ability to end games faster. But I am really interested in something you said just a little while ago, where you said that when you were given this design, you said there's no way we can make this, but we made it. So I'm really curious what happened.
I gave the feedback that this looked ridiculous. And, I mean, so for everyone out there, if you haven't been in one, almost none of you have been in one. So I was going to say, if you haven't been in a design meeting before, I'm like, yeah, to the 20 of you out there have been in a design meeting before. So, when you're talking with people, there's a lot of just like, hey, I'm asking you a question. You're going to give me an answer. I'm asking in good faith. You're answering in good faith. You're testing, you're learning, whatever. And, I remember asking Brian, who I think did a great job, by the way, developing this set. Like a lot of sweet stuff came from his team. I remember asking him about Anala and being like, this looks ridiculous. Are you sure about this? And him being like, yep, it's been playing well in our game so far. And, we've looked at it in the larger format of Commander and we think it'll be okay. And, I just took Brian out of the face value there. I trusted that. And even though it looks really strong to me, a lot of times, and Melissa, I'm sure you can vouch for this too, there's a lot of times where I'll read a card and be like, that looks ridiculous. And someone's like, no, it's actually fine. And the card is, in fact, totally fine. There's also
that does actually happen all the time. All the time.
There's also a lot of times where I'll be like, this card looks really weak. And I'll be like, actually, nope, it's pretty good. And then you'll play with it and you're like, yep, that card is pretty good. So that is the result the vast majority of the time. So you just kind of take it at face. And, in this case, I think Anala is one that we should have taken more rolls at, taken another look at. I'll also say that I know that this was a Eminence mechanic. So one of the things that we discovered about Eminence, and we'll get to this in the Eminence section, is Eminence also has very limited design space, because the number of things you can do for free on a commander that you haven't even cast is incredibly small. And so cost reduction, sure. Make a token, sure. We start running out of stuff really quickly. And I know that in the Wizard deck, they had a really hard time finding a good ability for it. And there's also this kind of like dual thing of like, at some point, you got to just be like, this is the best that we could come up with. So, and that was playing well in the deck and gave the deck an identity. And to Annull's credit, its ability did give the deck a better identity of like copying your ETB wizards and doing cool stuff. And there, as we'll get to in a moment, there's a lot of cool ETB wizards in this deck that are fun to copy. Just the amount of value you get out of it is a little bit too much. Yeah. Maybe it should have been more of a mana gate on it. I don't know. The other thing, by the way, that I don't like about this card is that Eminence, so, Eminence has its challenges, but the fact that it is mana gated here and none of the other ones are is really weird to me, right? Why is this mana gated, but Edgar isn't mana gated? Why is this mana gated and Airbow isn't mana gated? And for those out there who don't know what we're talking about, a mana gate is the pay one part of a Null's Clause. It just feels weird that we would choose one of the four to put a mana gate on when the ability seems like, when the four of them feel like the whole thing is you get it for free as like a Vanguard, which is kind of what we imagined it as. Eminence was actually called Coach in design was its playtest. It's like, it's the coach off of the sidelines, like, telling you. Anyway, so yeah, that part's weird to me about this card too. Anyway, that was a long and winding answer, but hopefully that was useful.
Yeah, like looking at all of the cards and being like, of all of the cards with Eminence, this is the one where I say I am really surprised that they made this. The other three, even though Edgar is super strong and, the cat one is, I don't want to cast the cat. I just want to use, I don't want to cast these. I just want to keep them in the command zone forever and get value. Like, that's not the greatest play pattern. But like, I can look at those three cards and be like, I understand why they made these. This one, I am less sure of why it's doing this, because it is both cheating on mana and cards in a way that you can't interact with. So this one is just like a much more big red flag to me. That's pretty much it. That's what I got. Okay.
Just a giant red flag. That's all I got. Yeah, I definitely, there's some card effects that you read and you're just like, this is dangerous. And giving you free clones of all your creatures, or free heat shimmers, I guess, of all your creatures, you read and you're like, that's going to be very dangerous. The one extra mana is like inconsequential, So yeah, I'm really not a big fan of Annull. Once again, I totally understand how the design team got there with this one. And, I think in this deck, the other thing too, is I think in the Biodome, this deck was always struggling a little bit. And so giving it a really powerful effect on its Eminence commander helps it catch up. The challenge is that outside of the Biodome, that causes other problems, right? So there's all push and pull here. So yeah, I mean, it's, I guess a fun fact about this deck, a couple other things. It was originally just blue-black in design. And when I handed it over to the final design team, it got red added into it just to give it more wizards to choose from and give it some more stuff to do. Because it was a little limited at just blue-black. And you see some of that here, which is kind of nice. And more ways to close the game. Because once again, this deck's big challenge was actually just winning a game. And even once it came out, I got a lot of feedback from players of like, they just could not figure out how this deck was going to win. And it's a very, it can win. I've won with this deck many times, but it's definitely a very like, got to play a slow game and eke out a lot of value and eventually kill with a creature. And it's tough. It's tough to get there on that one. So
I will say though, like I do like the deck and was surprised to hear that it was the least popular of the decks, because to me, like, I think the previous three decks, they did one thing. They played their tribe and attacked. And this one just has a lot more interesting ways to play it. And that appeals to me. And I would think that it appeals to more Magic players than less Magic players, just like having like more things to do in your commander game, rather than just like, okay, my deck just plays this cat and attacks and that's it, So I do like the idea of this deck a lot.
I guess I'd be curious if you're out there listening, watching, or whatever, post in the comments or tweet at us, whatever. How would you rank these four decks? Just in personal excitement to you. Don't worry about what we've told you already. Don't worry about what people out there like. Just right now, today, in the year 2022, personal excitement to you. How would you rank them? Because I do wonder now if maybe Cats would be less popular because it's been more done, or maybe be more popular because it's been more done. I don't know, right? Maybe I don't know the answer to that question. I'd be very curious to know what fans today think. You'll know that a lot of some of the newer stuff in this deck are bigger creatures trying to end the game with. Galecaster Colossus is one I think Glenn Jones made this card just to help end the game. It's a 5 UEU 5/6 giant wizard with tap and untapped wizard, bounce a non-land permanent you don't control. Right? So it's just like you play this,
I get it.
Pick up all their stuff. It's
like
kind of
this
a
design is
card,
this is not a fun looking card.
Anyway, I guess.
But I don't think anything really stands out to answer your question. Like, I see a bunch of wizards. They gain value. They have cool abilities. It looks like there's a lot of interesting things you can do, a lot of things you can discover. I'm sure this has a lot of gameplay to it. Not seeing really anything that stands out, though. Oh, Puppeteer Clique's a wizard. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Can I tell a Puppeteer Clique story?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to talk about the other two commanders. Please tell your Puppeteer Clique story first.
Oh, yeah. Great. Okay. So I played this card in my Fairies sideboard at a PTQ that I won. And I had a very epic play with it to win my top 4 and get on to the finals. So I guess like a little bit of backstory about this format is you had Fairies, which is like a bunch of 1/1 flyers and Bitter Blossom and Thoughtseize and that kind of stuff. And the other popular deck was a 5-color control deck with a bunch of Vivid Lands and Reflecting Pools, and it just basically played all of the best cards in the format. 5 colors, it played Cruel Ultimatum. It played Plume Veil. Like, those cards are very different from each other in terms of mana
remember
cost.
one turn you'd cast Cloud Thresher, which is 2 GG, and the next turn you would cast Cruel Ultimatum. Right, the mana base on this deck was absurd.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. Like, it was just, this deck played the most wild and crazy cards. Anyway, on to the story. So I'm playing Fairies. My opponent is playing 5-color control. My opponent is killing my Fairies left and right with all these sweepers. Like, Volcanic Fallout is another card that's in this deck. Anyway, he played 2 Cloud Threshers. And my board was, like, pretty much dead. So, and the Cloud Threshers were in the graveyard because he evoked them or whatever. So anyway, my opponent is at 18 life. Oh, I see your face. You know the story.
I know where this is going. Okay. I know where it's going. To finish your story, it's going to be an epic finish.
So I have the Puppeteer Clique in my sideboard, mostly for this deck. So anyway, I draw this card and play it. And I steal their Cloud Thresher out of their sideboard. And it does 2 damage to all creatures with flying. Oh, hey, that includes Puppeteer Clique. All right, Puppeteer Clique, you're dead. Oh, wait, it has Persist. So it came back to play and stole the second Cloud Thresher. And I had 2 Cloud Threshers in play, and it dealt 2 damage to all creatures with flying and all players. That's 4 damage, and then I attacked with 2 7/7s for a total of 18 damage and just killed him with Exaxes.
Did not see that. I bet they did not see that one coming.
Yeah, I don't know if the person saw it coming, but I remember when I drew this Puppeteer Clique and looked at their graveyard, I was like, oh.
For those who don't know Puppeteer Clique, this little Shadowmoor block card, it's a 3 black 3/2 flying fairy wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you get to take a creature from their graveyard and put it into play under your control, and you get rid of it at the end of the next turn, but it does gain haste. And it also has Persist. So you play the Clique, you take a card out of their graveyard, it eats your own creature, the Clique persists, comes back into play, you steal the other Cloud Thresher, you're in business, right? And Cloud Thresher is a green card that hits them because, I don't know, Hurricane existed or something like that. So yeah, that's sweet.
The most funny thing about this story is this PTQ was in like 2007 or something, but like Magic is such a great game, and this play was so epic that I remembered it all these years later, like so vividly that I can just like tell you who the opponent was. I can tell you where exactly I was. I can tell you what round we were in. It was the semifinals going into the finals, game 3. You know, it was like crazy. The things that you remember.
It blows my mind. I mean, I met up with a friend somewhat recently, and I hadn't seen this friend for, I don't know, a decade plus, like probably even longer than that. And we met up, and you know, we did our pleasantries, whatever. And then within like 20 minutes, we were rehashing stories from like Odyssey block constructed 20 years ago and recounting matches as though it was yesterday. And it's just like, yeah, how do we do that? You know, there's a couple interesting things. We're going way off topic, but enjoy it, listeners. Yep. I know you love some of the tangents. Memory is really tied to emotion. That's why you can remember things that are really that are like really highs or lows in your life. But sometimes I don't even know what I ate for like breakfast 2 days ago because I was just like eating breakfast, not thinking about it or whatever. Although maybe if you made a great breakfast, I'd feel differently. But anyway, so when you're playing Magic, and especially competitive Magic, my theory has always been, and this is, maybe just pseudoscience, me just making stuff up, but based on the fact that memory is so tied to emotion, my theory has always been that because the highs and lows of the Magic tournament, you're in the top 4 of this PTQ, you're on your way to the Pro Tour, right? You drew this card. It was an amazing play. That's going to stick with you because you feel it so much as you're playing. And to this day, I can recap board states from matches I played 10, 15, 20, even 20 years ago. And it's just wild that Magic does that.
Same. I can also recap all those old stories, and I have so many of them. So like maybe in a future episode when we're done with these decks, we have to do like a old Magic story episode or something. Oh
yeah, just Gavin and Melissa around the fire and telling stories when we like play tested together for the Pro Tour or whatever. That'd be a fun episode. I'll tell one more. Literally, this cannot be further from these decks, but whatever. We're halfway through. If you're here now, you're gonna listen to us tell some funny stories. You're not gonna click out, right? So it might surprise people out there, but I'm really bad at math. I mean, I can do like Magic math, like combat math, whatever. I'm good at that. Once you get into like the triple digits, or you start telling me that imaginary numbers exist or whatever, I'm like, those numbers are fake. I'm out of here. Right? I'm not interested. So when I was in college, I like had to memorize all these formulas for a math class I was in. It was really important that I figure it out, and I could not memorize these formulas. Like I didn't remember like what added up to what or whatever. So I was like, wait a second. There's something I know that I can memorize, and it's Magic cards. So I looked through my collection, and I laid out cards on the table. And I gave each card, I made like basically a mnemonic to like make each card correlate to a part of the equation, whether it's like the first letter of that card or the power toughness or whatever the case might be. And I memorized all my equations by memorizing Magic board states. I was like, just think of the board state. You'll know what cards are in this order. You know what each card means. Bam, equation memorized. And awesome. That to me is just like, yep, I'm very good at memorizing Magic boards. I'm very bad at math. Here's the solution. So anyway, back to Commander 2017. Let's talk about the other two commanders for this deck. So the front-facing commander, Wizard Tribal. We saw that already. The next up commander is about the spells part of the deck, and that is Kess, Dissident Mage, a card which has actually shown up in Eternal formats in Legacy. One and a Rockstar cube card too. 1 blue, black, red for a 3/4 legendary creature human wizard. It's got flying. During each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So basically it gives all of your instant sorceries flashback for their mana cost, which is pretty slick. Thoughts on Kess?
I think I love it. It's really fun. It's, casting your instants and sorceries is super fun. And you get to do it twice. Great. And the fact that it exiles, I think, is what makes this card balanced, because you are not going to be casting like the same one powerful thing over and over. And it will have a lot of like variety of gameplay for that reason. So yeah, great value card and fun.
Yeah, I think this card's pretty cool. I mean, this is a card that definitely reads dangerous, right? So much like Anala, you read this, you get to reuse all your spells. It sounds dangerous. But history has borne out that I think it's strong. We got to untap with it, right? Usually in the turn you play it, you can't do much, maybe cast a lightning bolt or something like that. So, or, a cantrip or whatever. So I think it's turned out to be a pretty fun and appealing card. And, it's a fun one to build with. I could see a world where maybe this even showed up in standard someday, maybe. I don't know.
All right. So here's a story about that, like related.
Yeah.
So the card Lear. From Innistrad. Yep. So we had this card in the file for a long time, and it was like, it did very well on the rare pull, so we were sure that we wanted to keep it. But there was a lot of like, this compares unfavorably to Kess, and it's mono blue, so you're limited to like what decks it can be your commander. So there was like a lot of like concern about like, are we going to be able to make a successful card because this Kess already exists? And we tried a lot of stuff, which I won't really get into the details, but like we also wanted to make the card that was right for standard. So we didn't limit it to once per turn because really we wanted it to be different from Kess. So that's pretty much the story. That's kind of like how, like why Lear is the way it is, because like we always had this Kess in our minds that we were kind of like always comparing it to. And turns out Lear is a pretty powerful standard card.
Yeah. It also got the can't be countered line added on there too, right? Which is a pretty big differentiator.
Yeah, that line was added on because it was like very frustrating to play against this while it was playing its own counter spells, because basically every counter spell you have is a double counter spell.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it was mostly on there to not play your own counter spells, to like be like, hey, no, you're only going to do proactive things with it, no counters allowed, But we do have one counter spell in standard that's like a remand variant, Divide by Zero. And that card is the counter spell that the Lear deck plays and is very powerful in the deck and like just a huge like, tempo enabler. And like if you're listening to this and play standard, you will know that the card did get banned in standard. Yep. And a lot of the reason why is because like Lear was really powerful, and Divide by Zero was I think pretty much the reason. And it's overall like a pretty frustrating card too. So I did not see that coming.
And note that Kess has during each of your turns, right?
Yes.
So you can't counter spells with it, which is a very different play pattern than Lear, which lets you counter stuff on their turn.
Right. Unless they try and place something on your turn into your counter in the graveyard, which they should not do, but you never know.
Yeah, it could happen. So yeah, I think Kess is pretty cool. Shout out, there's no relation, but shout out to Alex Kessler, who I know this card has been very important to, given it's got his name in it.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's a total coincidence, but cool nonetheless. And then the third legendary creature for this deck is Mercil, the Pretender. Mercil, throwback to old Magic story. Finally got on a card here. 1 blue, black, red for a 4/4 legendary creature human wizard. When Mercil the Pretender enters the battlefield, you may exile an artifact or creature card from your hand or graveyard and put a cage counter on it. It's a reference to Mercil's or Barl's cage, I think. Anyway, okay. Mercil or something like that. Anyway, Mercil the Pretender has all activated abilities of all cards you own in exile with cage counters on them. You may activate each of those abilities only once each turn. So basically, you get to get rid of your older artifacts and creatures whenever you play him, and then he has all the abilities of stuff that's been exiled. But
you only get to exile one thing.
Correct, but because of the cage, and this is the important thing.
Yeah.
Because of the cage counters, it tracks across castings. So all your Mercils will have all.
You can blink it, or like if they kill it and you play it from your command zone later, you get to make it have more and more abilities spliced onto it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this card is really cool. I don't know why I would want to exile something from my hand, but I guess there might be some situations where I would want to do that.
If you got like very powerful, But if you have that Galecaster Giant in your hand, you're like, I just want to make my 4-mana Galecaster Giant,
Oh no, that's so miserable. That's messed up. But yes, you can do that. Yeah, pretty interesting card.
Miserable is the word of the day. This episode is miserable. There's the title right there. We'll see if that sticks. Yeah, and it was cool to do this old throwback character. So we talked about the deck already a little bit, kind of skipped around a little bit. Those are the 3 commanders. Also just mentioned the new cards. We've got Galecaster Colossus, already told you about that one. Is it Chemister? Kindred Dominance, which ended up being one of the best of the cycle. Magus of the Mind, so the Magus cycle continues here with Mind's Desire. Portal Mage, Shifting Shadow, Tygum, Sidisi's Hand, and Vindictive Lich. Really my takeaway on this deck is, from a design perspective, Wizards was a theme that we knew people enjoyed. The Wizard Tribal, like that was popular, did well in all of our internal polling. We thought that doing an adjacent deck that was a more control-y deck would make sense, but it was so hard to find ways to close with this deck that I think it might have ended up a little too complex and a little too hard to win with.
Yep.
I don't know if you have any other thoughts kind of to close out this one, Melissa.
Yeah, like I said, like this deck appeals to me, and I think it appeals to like a spiky player, just because there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it. But the deck is like not straightforward at all, unlike the other 3 decks, which are very straightforward, So I can see why this one was not as popular. And also just like looking at the deck, like, you have this Kess, but you don't have a lot of instants and sorceries. Oh, maybe you do. Maybe I'm wrong.
You got like 18 of them,
Yeah, all right. I guess that's a solid number, but there's 31 creatures. That's so many. It doesn't, like, the proportion doesn't seem right to me if you're looking to play a Kess deck, but I guess it's more like a Wizard deck than a Kess deck. Yeah, I like the deck, but again, that's just me. But I'm sure there are lots of other players like me out there who also really like this deck.
Well, and that's exactly why I thought it was important to have like a sideways 4th deck of just like, hey, you're not really into casting a bunch of creatures and doing stuff with them, or just attacking. You want a more tricksy deck to play. And that's what this was aiming to do.
Yeah, like I would certainly choose this one if we're like, hey, we're going to play a 4-player commander game with these precons, you pick first. Then yeah, I would pick this one. I think this one is the most interesting to me.
Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished, Melissa. Perfect. All right. Well, so what do you think? We talked about this deck a bunch and told some stories along the way. What do you grade this one? A through F. What do you give an Arcane Wizardry? We gave Dragons an A.
I have to try not to bias my opinion is the thing, because I already said that I really liked it.
Yeah.
But I understand its problems too.
Hey, you know what? More people watch the Daily Show than the news, So it's like you're allowed to have a little bit of bias in your opinions. That's okay.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we did what did I give the last one again? Can you remind me? I gave it a B-. I think I gave it a B-.
You gave the cat deck a B+. You gave the vampire deck a B-, and you gave the dragon deck I think A-, B+.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And I gave the vampire deck a B-. Is that what you said?
I believe that's true. Yep.
Yeah.
Someone in the comments will tell us if that's not.
I would put this one above the vampire deck. About the cat deck. So like about a B. Yeah, we'll go with B.
All right. Yeah, I think I appreciate that. I'm going to give this one a C. I'm going to knock this one down a little bit for a few reasons. I think one, Anala is just like outrageous. Like this
I thought we weren't using the Eminence mechanic in our ratings.
I feel like we shouldn't knock it for having the Eminence keyword, but we can knock it if the card is like just generally like if the card if self-contained is ridiculous. I don't know. It feels like I should maybe knock it a little bit for Nala. Also, though, it feels
then I should knock mine too. Then, well, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. You rank it on your scale. It feels right. I don't know why. Maybe it's because we'll get to this in a second. Maybe it's because I like the Euro Dragon, and that's why I was trying to protect it earlier. But Anala just feels like we all agreed it was the worst designed of the cycle. I think so. That gets knocked. I think this deck is also. It could have been just. I like having a different deck, a different kind of deck. I think this one could have just been a little more straightforward, though. That might have really helped it out. Or, had more of a tighter spells theme or something, as opposed to where it kind of ended up, which a lot of players found very obtuse and difficult to win with. So it's got a lot of cool cards. People like wizards. But I think I'm going to give maybe I could bump it up to C+, but I think I'm going to stick on C. And if you want to give it a B, though, that's totally okay.
I will change my grade to B- because I do admit that my opinion is biased. And I do think that the commander is like a bit egregious and unhealthy. I'm trying to find the right word to use. Like,
you don't mean unhealthy,
design.
But
Well, unhealthy is a much better word to use, though, than miserable,
Yeah. No, totally. You're right. I guess I'll give it a C+. I'll bump mine up to C+. So you can have a B-, I can have a C+. What's the difference? I don't know.
I don't want to bias your opinion either. Like, a C is totally legit.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to give it a C. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to give it a C.
All right.
One other thing I want to call out before we leave is that I did think was pretty cool is the blue-white dragons deck, the 5-color dragon deck had a blue-white Tygum in it, which was the Cons of Tarkir Tygum. And then this deck has blue-black Tygum, which is the Dragons of Tarkir timeline Tygum, which I thought was pretty cool. It's a neat mirroring in the same set. People asked for Tygum, and I was like, let's give them both. So funny little thing there. Okay, so those are all 4 of the decks. A couple of things I'd love to do. First, let's talk about our cycles. And Melissa, it's time. Let's talk about Eminence. I don't even know where to start with this.
We've already talked about Eminence a decent amount.
Yeah, I mean,
but we can kind of just back up and talk about why it's unhealthy for Commander.
Yeah, why don't we just start there, Melissa? What is the problem with Eminence? Why is it a challenge for Commander?
Where to begin? I'll just kind of say some things. It might be in a random order, but first, the most fun part about your Commander is building your deck with your Commander and then getting it into play and doing cool stuff with it. And these designs tell you, no, don't play your Commander. Keep them over here and get value anyway and just play your other stuff, So I think that makes them not fun to start out. Second, interaction is very important in Magic. Like Magic is a game where we have instant speed interaction. And also being able to interact with your opponent's stuff is part of what makes Magic fun. And the fact that these are in a zone that cannot be interacted with are problematic as well. And gaining value turn after turn for no cost. Like to get value, you should have to play the card, spend mana for the card, get it actually onto the board. But these don't do that, you know? That's what I have for now. I'm sure I missed something.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. You know, just like you have your commander off to the side, it just does something every turn for you or over the course of the game. And it just also provides a free advantage, which is so dangerous. You know, like you can even draw a comparison to Companion, I think, where it's like Companion was a huge problem because he just gave you a free card every game. In some cases, these are giving you bonuses better than a free card every game. Like I would say that Edgar is better than a Companion, right? Like I would say Anala is probably better than a Companion.
Yeah.
Your dragon may be better than Companion. Yeah,
the comparison is like the Eminence ability, you don't have to pay mana for it, and mana is huge. Like mana is like the thing that balances Magic, right? More powerful effects cost more mana, less powerful effects cost less mana. A lot of these don't cost mana, which is the thing that is the most problematic about them and the thing that like differentiates them from Companions, where like the first iteration of Companion you had to cast the card. You know, obviously still problematic as a free card in your hand. And like then later versions, like the thing that made them a little bit more balanced, but still problematic is the fact that you had to actually pay mana for the effect. And then Eminence doesn't have that knob. There's just no mana involved. Except for the wizard one, I guess, but that one is like you're gaining more mana than you're spending anyway. So it's like still mana negative. Is that the word? I don't know.
Yeah. No, totally. And it's the same problem that Companions had, where it's asking you to play a very restricted deck. It's like, oh, you got to play a vampire deck to make this good, which sounds like a restriction. But if your vampire deck is decent enough anyway, you're just getting a huge advantage for playing all these vampires now. So that's a challenge. I will say, so we talked about a lot of the negatives of Eminence, and I do think it's a mechanic with a ton of flaws and must be done very carefully. I do think that there is some room for Eminence. I guess one more thing I'll say before I get there. There's also as I mentioned earlier, there's very limited design space for Eminence. There aren't that many good things you can do with it, which makes it a very hard mechanic to do a lot of. With that said, as I was getting into, I think there is a little bit of space for Eminence, just not in these designs. I do think that with a higher mana gate or things that cost mana, there could actually be some cool stuff there, right? Like if Edgar had been like, whenever you cast a vampire, you may pay 3. If you do make a 1/1 vampire, it's a lot more manageable. It's still good, but it's a lot more manageable. I also personally believe, and I said this earlier, that the ones that created additional stuff on the board to deal with were a lot more problematic than the ones which help augment your existing cards. To me, I like Erebos and You're a Dragon personally, because what do? They make your dragons that you were playing and your cats that you're playing already better. Where it's like, you know, if the cats or dragons are an issue, that's fine. You can just kill them like anything else. But with Anala, it's fueling entirely new strategies and all kinds of combos. And with Edgar, it's giving you a ton of just extra cardboard material on the board with all of these tokens. So, you know, I kind of feel like there's almost one good or two good designs of like Erebos pumping things up and Your Dragon making stuff cost less among these. Then the other two were just ill-fated or should have had a mana gate or, you know, something that was a little more directional.
My line is not quite where yours is. Like my line, I think Erebos is acceptable. You know, it's giving you a stat boost on something that you already have to the board. So that's acceptable design in my mind. But the Ur Dragon is not, because that's just cheating on mana. And that can just be very dangerous. Especially like as time goes on, we're not going to stop printing dragons. So, you know, so like the more years go on, the more powerful a tribe will get, because, you know, we're just only going to be giving you more tools for it. So yeah, it is dangerous and like is only going to get more powerful down the line.
So like under that metric, perhaps dragons you control enter with a +1/+1 counter would have been more reasonable.
That is an acceptable design in my mind. You know, you're not getting a resource, you're not getting like a free mana, you're just getting like a stat boost, which that seems reasonable to me.
I mean, I would still, don't get me wrong, dear listeners, I'd still put, I think, Eminence in the bottom third of mechanics we've probably ever designed. But I don't know. I think many people out there would say we will never see Eminence again. I think we could see it again, but done very carefully. I don't think you'd see like 4 of them. You might see like a Eminence card in a place where it really makes sense or something like that.
Yeah, and only one of the acceptable designs in my mind, which, like I said, the Ur Dragon is not one of them. So
right, and there's and you lead the balance team for Commander, so I feel like you're gonna have a pretty good say as if that happens or not.
Yeah, so so that is my line. So let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, and if you have any other ideas of well, not ideas, that's not the right word, but if you have any other thoughts on like acceptable levels of Eminence designs, feel free to throw them out there.
So this is a tough one. What do you think? We've been grading all these mechanics that we've done over the course of this show. What grade are you going to give to Eminence?
I would not give it a good grade. It would be very much down there. What did we give Partner? Did we give it an F?
Partner, we gave, I think it was like if I remember right, it was a C as a mechanic, but an F on execution in that product.
Okay, that makes sense. So I would say that like both the mechanic is bad and the execution is bad here. I hate to say it, but I would probably just give it an F.
I think that's totally fine. I'm going to give it, I know this is a small quarrel. I'm going to give it a D or a D minus, just because I do think there is some good space here. I guess I'll give it a D. I don't think it's a fail. I think there is cool stuff that you can do with it. As opposed to like the execution of 2 colored partners in the last set where I thought it was a pretty big failing. But I could believe an F. Like I would not fault anyone who gave Eminence an F. That's fine. But yeah, it certainly is not high. So I'll give it a D. You can give it an F. We'll put that in the annals of Commander Chronicles history. Up next, let's get out of Eminence. We've talked about this a lot today. Let's go on to something different that I think is way more exciting in terms of freshness to talk about on this show, which is the Kindred cycle. So one of the things that I identified when I was working on these decks is we're going to make tribal decks, but they're only going to have 4 tribes in them because we can only really focus on 4 here. So there are only 4 decks. So what I thought I would do is make a really cool rare cycle that let you pick your own tribe when you played them. So you could then put them in whatever deck you had. So if you had your Ninja deck or your Slivers deck or your, whatever, Fairies deck or your Homerid deck or whatever you had, you could play this thing. So I'll walk through them. There's Kindred Boon, which is 2 white for an enchantment. As Kindred Boon enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. 1 dub, put a divinity counter on target creature of the chosen type. Each creature with a divinity counter on it is indestructible that you control. So you get to spread out some indestructibility. That's pretty cool. One that I like a lot is Kindred Discovery, 3 blue. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature of the chosen type that you control enters the battlefield or attacks, you draw a card. So makes them all, gives you tons of cards back, which is often what tribal decks need. Kindred Dominance is maybe the most played one, I think. 5 black sorcery. Choose a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of that type. So that's very strong in a single tribe deck. Kill off all your opponent's stuff and keep your own. You've got Kindred Charge, 4 red. Choose a creature type. For each creature you control of the chosen type, create a token that's a copy of that creature. They gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the end step. So it lets you heat shimmer all your stuff if you're playing one tribe. And then finally, Kindred Summons, 5 green. Choose a creature type. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X creature cards of the chosen type, where X is the number of creatures you control of that type. Put those cards onto the battlefield and shuffle the rest into your library. So you basically will double all that you have.
Double your creatures, yep.
Notably, it's an instant, so you can surprise folks with this, which I think is kind of cool.
Nice.
So that's what's going on with the Kindred cycle. Any thoughts on these? We haven't really talked about these much yet. So,
yeah, like overall, I like them. I like the space of choose your own tribe. We did that a little bit in Call Time.
Yeah,
they had a small amount of it, not really a ton. Mostly because we found that in Limited, it was too difficult to choose your own tribe. Because, like, first of all, in Limited, you're not going to have, like, all of your creature types are not going to be elves, right? You're going to have, a mishmash of them. And if you only have elves in your hand, but your most prominent tribe is dwarves, and then you draw this card, you're like, oh no, what do I do? So that's why, like, we removed a lot of those at lower rarities. that was a really big tangent. But anyway, for Commander, I do really like them for Commander. And like these designs all look really cool. I guess the one that strikes me as a little bit on the weak side is the Kindred Boon, mostly because it's very mana intensive. And then if they destroy this, you might be sad, you know?
Right.
If
it's
six, have lethal damage or whatever.
It's 6 mana before anything is indestructible. And then, once you get it going, it's pretty strong, but a single disenchant cuts off all your indestructibility, right? Now these days, maybe you just grant straight indestructible counters, which would be a lot stronger because you couldn't disenchant the enchantment and get rid of it. But I agree that one's a little on the weak side. I think the green one is also a bit win more. Maybe the red one too are like a little bit win more, but they're still fun to cast. Like they're a blast to resolve.
Yeah, like that's what I was gonna say. They are really fun to cast. Like this green one at instant looks awesome. Very exciting. But not necessarily win more either. Yeah. Like, well, what if you're getting attacked for lethal? Well, maybe suddenly you're not, So
yeah. So maybe suddenly you have like 8 new creatures or something, right? Yeah, that's a pretty good point. Yeah, I think we all chose, if I remember right, one other fun thing we did here is for all 5 of the Kindred cycle, we chose creatures to depict on them that were other tribes you could go build. So the white one has like knights, the blue one has merfolk, the black one has demons, the red one has goblins, and the green one has elves, which I thought was kind of like a fun little Easter egg too.
That's cool. Very cute.
So Kindred cycle, what would you give this as a grade, Melissa?
I'm pretty high on it. Like A-ish.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. Like B+ A- for me. Just like they're fun to cast. They're like appealing. They let you build your own deck. None of them seem too bananas. Like the black one is very strong as a 7 mana, sweep all your opponent's stuff. But you're only getting a 2 mana discount off of Plague Wind, so it's like not that big of a discount for playing all of one creature type. Plus, maybe they have like a random vampire lying around.
Plus, like this could also backfire. Like somebody could have a lot of the same creature as you or whatever. Like this is not like as reliable as Plague Wind. Yeah.
And then the final cycle I want to get to are the curses. So if you remember, dear listener or Melissa, when we reviewed Commander 2013, there was the curse cycle that we looked at. And this time around, we decided to do 5 more curses. This was kind of Brian Hawley's solution to the cycle problem in a deck full of tribes. The dual creature thing didn't work out. So he made up 5 new curses. Here's what they are. And there's a bit of a twist on them this time around. Curse of Vitality, 2 in white for an enchantment or a curse. It enchants a player. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, you gain 2 life. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So that is, I'd say, a very weak Magic card. We keep moving on to the blue one. So they're all enchant players. They're all curses. The blue one, Curse of Verbosity, 2 blue. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, draw a card. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So I guess the gag on all of these is, to clarify, whenever someone else attacks this player or you attack this player, you will always get the bonus. So like if I play this on Melissa and Mark attacks Melissa, I will draw a card and that player will draw a card. So unlike the C13 curses where we complained, one of the complaints we had about them was that you play them and the other players got a better advantage than you on them a lot of the time. These ones at least allow you to keep some advantage for yourself. Of like, I'll always at least get a card.
After all, you did play the card yourself.
Right.
You should be getting more of an advantage than the opponents do.
Exactly. Curse of Disturbance. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, you make a 2/2 zombie. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. The red one is probably the most played one. That's Curse of Opulence. Single red mana. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, create a colorless gold token, which is the same thing as Treasure with a different name, which this one kills me to no end because it means you have to put a gold token in your product if you use it instead of a treasure token, or you don't have to, but usually you do. And each opponent attacking that player does the same. And then finally, the green one, which is maybe the weirdest, Curse of Bounty, 1 green. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, untap all non-land permanents you control, and that player does the same. So their stuff kind of gets vigilance. You get to untap your stuff again if you want it. This one is also kind of funky in that sometimes you put it on yourself so that you untap all your stuff if somebody attacks you, which is really weird. Anyway, and they all feature the art of this unlucky planeswalker, which we've then put in other places, like in Modern Horizons 2, as whatever that deal 5 damage to planeswalkers card is. Okay, so those are all the curses. Thoughts on these, Melissa?
So I am not a fan of these. All right, let me go into some detail why. So first, the power level is very like wide. You know, you have the white one, which is a very weak magic card. Oh man, poor white. Like, as an aside, like this was during a time where like white's color pie was pretty small. And so when we did cycles, what that meant was white couldn't do a ton of stuff. So it usually just got the life gain of the cycle. I do think we've expanded the white color pie quite a bit over the years, and we have some really sweet cards coming up down the line, which I'm really excited about. But during the time where these decks were getting developed, which was like 2017, that was not true. So unfortunately, this white curse got the short end of the stick here.
I think this year is going to be a really good year for white. So white players, keep your eyes open, especially for Commander.
Yep.
I'll say that
all players. Maybe some of you guys who hate white will have a change of heart and love white, because we have some sweet cards coming up for sure.
It's so brutal to me that the C13 curse that we all hated was the white curse that gave you a life when you attack somebody. And in C17, there's like, well, new curse, same rhythm, gain life when you attack people. That's so brutal.
It's
so
like,
brutal.
Okay, we have to make this tight cycle. It has to care about attacking. Okay. Okay, go. All right. Well, blue draws cards. Boom, done. All right. Black. Oh, black makes zombie. Boom, done. All right, what does white do? Oh, no. All right, fine. Game life. We're done.
I feel like I would have made the black or the white one the token maker, because that's the natural thing for white to do, and then made the black one something different. You know,
like maybe a life drain, so at least it does something. I don't even like that.
Or like I don't know, it could be a raised dead. I don't know, raised dead. There's options. There's options. Just it's so rough for white.
All right, but anyway, like continuing on with why I don't like these is because they really dogpile onto one person. So these cards are really, really unfun for specifically one person. Like you put this on somebody and that person is going to get attacked by everybody around the table. So not only are you getting attacked to death, but all of your three opponents are gaining value. So yeah, that's pretty much why I don't like them. And my story about these is like, so as you guys may know, I didn't really know very much about these cards when I started working on Commander, because this was kind of like during the time where I was really focused on Standard and Limited. So when I started working on Commander products, I was seeing a lot of these for the first time. And I remember I was doing a playtest and somebody played the Black Curse against me. And, you know, the game continues. I'm getting attacked every turn. My opponents are getting zombies while I'm taking damage. And I was like, what is this card? We can't make this card. This card is like incredibly unfun. We can't make this. And then the other person in the playtest is like, yeah, this is from C17. This is already a card. I was like, oh no.
Right, we made this 3 years ago. Yeah, totally. I mean, when we reviewed the C13 curses, we had two big notes, I felt. One is that your opponents got more of an advantage than you did, because they got more attack cycles than you. And two, they were really unfun to play against, because you put them on someone and that person got attacked. Like a turn one Curse of Opulence is so brutal. You play a turn one Curse of Opulence on somebody, and that player is just getting attacked at every opportunity for the rest of the game, because you always want that treasure.
Yeah, and the card and the zombie. Not so much the life gain, and the green one is also situational.
Yeah, so they're pretty rough. So they did, to the design team's credit, they fixed the first problem, which was, hey, it's frustrating that the other players get more bonuses than you, but the pylon problem is still there. So I'm not a big fan of these kinds of curses here. These attack player get a trigger curses. I don't think we should do them again in Commander, at least as a full cycle. So not huge. What are you giving these, Melissa? What's your grade?
Well, I cannot possibly give them the same grade that I gave Eminence, but I am pretty low on these. I really don't like them. So like I'm probably on something like D.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a D too. This is I think it's not the best play. Very different reasons than Eminence, but I think it plays kind of weak. Or kind of unfun rather. Okay, last thing to do, the award show. We're coming to the end of C17. We've talked through all the decks. It's time to hand out some awards. And I gotta say, this awards list feels a lot different than some of the previous ones, because for me, there's like some that are pretty clear. And this was also a year where I felt like the deck themes were so tight that there weren't like a lot of weird out of place things. It was like, oh yeah, that makes sense why this is in. So we'll start with the most out of place reprint. There are four options I have down here. There's Wing Shards, which is target player sacrifices an attacking creature with Storm. kind of just an out of place card. Don't really know what that's doing here. Polymorphous Jest, which is 1 UU. All creature target player controls become 1/1 frogs until end of turn. Crushing Vines, which is 2G. Choose 1, destroy an artifact, or destroy a creature with flying. Or Rain of Thorns, 4GG. Choose 1 or more. Destroy target land, destroy target artifact, or destroy target enchantment. Those are the best 4 picks I could find. What do you got, Melissa, out of those 4?
All right, like the 2 green cards, it does make a lot of sense why they're there, because you were talking earlier about having flying problems, and I think like modal spells are like pretty useful in Commander. They're not the strongest cards, but like for precons, they do make sense.
Although I will note that Rain of Thorns was in the Dragon deck, weirdly, which has the most flying, so I don't know.
Oh, that is actually weird and a good call out. Also, that card is expensive, and a lot of the Dragon cards are expensive. Okay, I was going to more expect that card to be in the Cat deck, which probably has the lower curve, and the 3 mana one to be in the Dragon deck, if they both wanted that effect.
Yeah, I don't know. 6 mana, kill an enchantment, artifact, and land. It's also LD. It's like LD that will always go off in your Dragon deck, which is kind of a bummer too. Like, just LD's not very fun. You've got, bounce lands running around or whatever. Anyway, but yeah, those are my picks. Maybe it's still fine, but maybe it's not the weirdest card, but I don't like including it in that deck for a lot of reasons. The mana curve, like, why are you playing in your Dragon deck this 6 mana card, this extra 6 mana card, All
right, and Wing Shards, what deck was that in?
Wing Shards? I think that would have to be the Cat deck. Yeah, the Cat deck.
Yeah, that strikes me as very weird, because the Cat deck is like a play on my own turn deck with the equipment and the cats, So I would not expect it to have an instant that was like reactive. Like, I guess I would expect it more in the Vampire deck, although it doesn't make sense in these decks at all to me. And the Polymorphous Jest, I'm assuming that was in the Wizard deck, but maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine it's in the Dragon deck. So
yeah, it's got to be in the Wizard deck.
Yeah, Polymorphous Jest is in the Wizard deck. Yep.
Yeah, I don't really know why this one is there. I guess I guess it's like a biodome thing, right? Like all these decks have big creatures, and this is like hey, now you're attacking me. Now you have small creatures, and I'll block. So and also this art is really funny.
It is true. You got that going for it.
Yeah, so like when I was looking this up, I looked at I was like, oh wow, and I just like laughed a little bit. So I think I'm gonna go with Wing Shards as the most out of place reprint.
Yeah, it seems pretty weak. Also, the rough part about Wing Shards to me is that in the Cat deck especially, you're gonna be tapping out to equip your stuff. Like, you're not gonna have a lot of extra mana lying around, right?
Yeah,
you're gonna be
that's the thing. Like, this is a tap out deck, so I don't know when you're going to have this 3 mana.
Okay, so most out of place reprint goes to Wing Shards. Next up, best flavor. I got 5 of these picks for you.
All right.
One of them
these are going to be great.
We'll find out. One of them is Alms Collector. It's 3 dub for a 3/4 cat cleric. It's got flash. If an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, instead you and that player each draw a card. So it's like, oh, you're going to get a little bit. I'm going to get a little bit. I don't know. I always felt like it had a bit of resonance to me. Cool card. Teferi's Protection. Most of you will know what this one does, but just in case you don't, 2 dub, instant. Until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you have protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. Exile Teferi's Protection. Another pick, Portal Mage. This card's pretty funny. I've always thought this is humorous. 2U for a 2/2 flash human wizard. When Portal Mage enters the battlefield during the declare attacker step, that's always a line, you may reselect which player or planeswalker target attacking creature is attacking. So it's like they're attacking you and you're like, whoop, here's my portal. And you walk through it and attack somebody else.
That's funny.
Right? It's very like, I don't know, Looney Tunes or something. There's New Blood, which is a card that's got a wacky story I told on this channel before. It's 2 black for a sorcery.
Oh, I know this one.
As an additional cost to cast New Blood, tap an untapped vampire you control, gain control of target creature, and then change the text of that creature by replacing all instances of one creature type with a vampire, which is kind of a cool thing and very flavorful. Also literally flavorful because they're converting you. But anyway. And then last but not least is Heirloom Blade. It's a 3 mana cost equipment. The equipped creature gets +3/+1. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a type with it, a creature type with it. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Equip 1. So your thing dies and it goes to its next of kin. Those are my 5 picks for best flavor. Which of those do you like the most?
All right, I do have an answer, but first I want to give my runner-up answer to Teferi's Protection, where that one has excellent flavor if you already are a Magic player and you know what's going on there. But if you are just a person and you're just like reading these cards without a ton of context about the lore and stuff, my vote for most flavorful is New Blood.
New Blood, yeah.
This one I don't think is in Color Pie, but wow, this tells the story of turning somebody into a vampire like super well.
Yeah, for me, it's a dead heat between New Blood and Portal Mage. They're like both awesome concepts.
Portal Mage is good too.
They both make total sense and are really funny. But I guess I am going to go with New Blood. I designed it, which of course gives me a little bit of preference for it. Although I think Glenn Jones made Portal Mage, who great job on that one. That one's really cool. Yeah, I think we go for New Blood just because the replacing of it all with vampires, like such a cool, flavorful thing to do. The fun story about this,
the name, like. Yeah, this is great.
The fun story about this, if you missed my video on it, is that I made this card for this product. It was so popular that Ixalan stole it from this product. They're like, hey, we want to use this card instead. So, of course, Ixalan gets to win out. But then as Ixalan's story was being made, the vampires of Ixalan don't bite you and convert you into vampires. So it didn't make sense anymore in that set. So it got put back in here. It was called Vampirize in playtest. Fun story. Okay, third card, or the third category, is the Oops category. Oops, we shouldn't have made this one. I wrote down one Magic card. Can you guess which Magic card I wrote down?
Yeah, it's the Wizard Eminence thing, right?
Oh, I wrote down Edgar Markov.
Oh. Well, like, couldn't you argue it's just Eminence?
Sounds like we've got a debate. Okay, all right, Edgar or Anala. Which one do you think it is? Because to me, clearly, like, Eminence has got to be the biggest oops here. So that's one of those four cards is gonna win the award. I had Edgar as the most problematic, the most played, the most powerful, like in terms of how like popular it is in the highest powered commander formats. But maybe it is Anala. Like you can make an argument for Anala here. Like
yeah, like I think I will make the argument for that because like with Edgar, you have to play vampires. They are not that strong. They have weaknesses. But don't get me wrong, this card is egregious and I don't like it, and it is noobs for sure. But the other one, like, I think you just gain more. Like, it has more combos, it has more mana cheating, and more, like, less of a prescriptive deck building. Like, it's a lot more open-ended. Like, yes, wizards, but, like, wizards is, like, a common enough creature type, you know? So
yeah,
that's why I'm going with that. But that one is not as popular, I don't think, as Edgar Markov. But vampires are like a well-loved tribe, and people who play vampires are playing it more because they love vampires, and that's the commander option that they have if they want to play a Mardu vampire deck. It's the only option. But the wizard one is like, if you're playing this card as your commander, you are there to do unfair things. You are not there to have fun with wizards, you know?
It's true, right? Like with Anala, I think if you play Spell Seeker and you've got a black mana or 2 mana up or something like that, you can go infinite. It's like, there's no wizard tribal happening here. This is just a dumb combo that you're playing.
You are only doing unfair things with that one. Like, you are up to no good. But with Edgar, you are up to lots of good. You just want to have a good old fun game and play some vampires, you know?
You make a very compelling argument, Melissa. I am still going to give it to Edgar, but it is close. And I'm very curious what the comments think about this one. My guess is the comments are going to say Edgar because they've played against it more. But do not sleep on Anala. Mm-hmm. Like Melissa's totally right. This is a card that is like you only play when you're up to no good, and you don't play it in your wizard tribal deck. You just play it in like your dumb combo deck. So you make a really good argument. I'd be very curious to hear this chat play out in the comments. I think that's a good one. So all right, little disagreement there, but it's good. It's good. You know. I thought it was funny that I'm like, oh, there's one card, right? And you're like, yeah, this other card. So it's a good time.
But I mean, like, we both have the same like point, like, which is Eminence was a mistake, and these cards are kind of messed up. Yep.
Okay, Sweetest Legend. I got 4 picks. Right. I've got the Eurodragon, who we talked about. It's a big dragon. Lets you play your dragon tribal deck. You know, it's pretty sweet. We have Kess, who we talked about already, as a pretty cool spells commander. We have Mathas, who is like the bad bounty counters card. And then Wasatora, who we actually haven't read yet on the show today.
Don't know this one.
Yeah, Wasatora, 2 black, red, green for a 5/4 flying trample cat dragon Whenever Wasatora, Nakoru Queen, deals combat
one.
damage to a player, that player sacrifices a creature. If they can't, you make a 3/3 black, red, and green cat dragon creature token with flying. This one is not the strongest, but I have it on sweetest because it makes cat dragons, which are pretty awesome. So that's why I made the cut.
Yeah, you said sweetest, not strongest.
This is the sweetest legend, yeah.
Like, I remember, like, actually reading this card for the first time, and I didn't care what it did. I was like, oh my god, cat dragon. And it makes cat dragons, and there was a token. Oh, does that mean that's the answer? Yeah, I guess that means that's the answer. I almost gave it to Kess, though. As you were reading the names, I was like, oh, it's Kess. Easily. And then you were like, cat dragon. I was like, oh. Okay. Oh, cat dragon.
Yeah, I think, my answer would be if cuteness is a factor, I'm going to go for the Wasatora. It's impossible to beat. My Kess is also my pick there. So I think we're pretty aligned in that one. Kess is pretty sweet too. Okay, most weird card. There are 4 candidates for this category. All right. I've got Mercil the Pretender. This is the dude that exiles stuff with cage counters and then he gets your activated abilities of them. I've got Shifting Shadow, which is a card that I pitched for C15 and then put in here because, anyway, long story, but I always like to save designs that are tried and don't get used. Shifting Shadow, 2 red, enchantment aura, enchant creature. Get ready for a long card. Enchanted creature has haste, and at the beginning of your upkeep, destroy this creature. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card onto the battlefield and attach Shifting Shadow to it, then put all other cards revealed this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So basically, every turn, the creature is going to turn on to something else in your deck at random. This is what's going on here. There is New Blood, which we talked about already. It's weird because it replaces all of the creature type. And then Portal Mage, which, as you know, reselects which player or planeswalker target attacking creature is attacking, which is pretty wacky. Of those 4 cards, what do you got for most weird?
I'm going to eliminate New Blood. That's not that weird to me. Like, it's weird for, like, Color Pie, but, like, not as a card. It makes sense as a card. I think I want to eliminate Portal Mage, too, because, like, we don't often use those words on Magic cards, but when you read it, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, let me read these other ones real quick.
Yeah, Mercil or Shifting Shadow. That's the 2 that remain.
Sorry, what's the first one? I think I looked up the wrong card.
Mercil the Pretender. This is the 4-mana wizard that exiles artifacts or creatures with cage counters on them, and then has all activated abilities of all the cards you own in exile.
Yeah, we talked about this already. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, this card is cool. Is it Shifting Shadow? This is a tough one. All right, it's definitely not New Blood. But I think the other 3 are actually now in contention.
I'll definitely say this set doesn't have that many weird cards. I think just the tribal nature of the set made it a little more straightforward. So this is actually hard, not because there's like a bunch of hyper weird cards, but a bunch of like a little weird cards, you know? Mm-hmm.
Like Shifting Shadow is wordy, but once you understand what it does, I think this card is actually pretty cool. Like you never know what you'll get. Although, unless you only have 1 creature in your deck and you're just kind of doing ETBs every turn, but you probably won't do that with this card. There are probably other ways to cheat things if you want to do that kind of thing. It's not the Pretender. Like, we do stuff like that every now and then. Maybe it is Portal Mage. No, that card's sweet, though. It's not weird. I get it. You know? Like, we've done cards like Master Warcraft where you, like, choose what the things are attacking and what's blocking. This is similar in my mind. So maybe it's just the Shifting Shadow, but like, I don't know. These cards don't strike me as like, yeah, this is weird, like the way that previous cards on other episodes have been,
I didn't think about it, but maybe the weirdest card is Teferi's Protection. That card it was the first phasing card in like over 15 years or something like that.
That is weird. Like,
I didn't even think about that till now. Maybe that is actually a winner.
You don't have any permanents for a period of time. That's weird. Are there any like, is that like a delayed trigger? Did they trigger and come back into play? If so, you can stifle that and just wreck someone's day. No,
they just phase out, so they're just not a trigger to come back in.
All right.
Maybe you know what? I'll give it to Teferi's Protection. It's a very weird card, and it was the first time we saw phasing in a long time. That way, it'll win at least one category.
It's weird that like that wasn't on your radar because that card is just so like popular.
Right.
Like, but I feel like it's just a staple in all white decks. So it's, it's just like, it's like, oh, I'll phase out all my stuff. Yeah, that's just a thing that happens. That's normal.
Like historically, our weirdest card have not been staples most of the time. So, but this is a card that's kind of glazed over. But no, I think it does get there.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong about this real quick. Was that the first time phasing has been on a card in a very long time since phasing was a thing way back then?
Yeah, in like 15 years or, something wild like that.
So we do that commonly now. Like we do phasing on things every now and then as like I protect my thing, or like we did it on one of the more recent Teferis. So phasing isn't weird these days. But back then, seeing phasing on a card was actually super weird. So yeah. We're done. Teferi's Protection.
There it is. Strongest card. Only got 3 in this category. I've got Edgar and Anala, which, we've talked about at length. And then Teferi's Protection hanging out here as well for strongest card.
Yeah.
What do you got for strongest?
So I will say, I know that I talked a bit about the wizard got Anala already, but I do think Edgar is the stronger card. Weaker deck, stronger card. Teferi's Protection. I mean, at the end of the day, Teferi's Protection is just I save my stuff for a turn. Like that is situational. So I don't think that would be strongest card. So I will go with Edgar here.
I'll stick with my guns. I'll go with Edgar as well. Okay, weakest card. I only have 1 card written down for weakest card.
Okay.
Which card do you think it is?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look at all the cards and see. Like, do I have it? Oh, hold on. Is it Curse of Vitality?
It's Curse of Vitality.
Oh,
it's
no.
so bad. It's so bad. It's like gain some life and maybe give an opponent some life for 3 minutes. It's just,
oh, no.
It just looks horrible.
Oh, no.
That's no good. Okay. Final question. Melissa, which card won the set? This is like the timeless card. This is the card that you look at and you're like, and I think of the set, I'll always think about this card. I have 4 options. I have the Eurodragon. I have Edgar Markov. I have Teferi's Protection. And then last, I have Path of Ancestry, which we haven't talked about at all, but it's a mana-fixing land. Taps, ETB's tapped, and then taps for mana of your commander's color identity. And if you spend it to cast a spell that matches a creature type with your commander, you get to scry one.
Okay. I will also give one that we haven't talked about today.
Yeah.
But it's the, I'm not going to know the name of it, but it's the one that is a very common cube card. It's a blue-white card.
Fractured Identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that card is sweet. That is really sweet.
That is a nice one for consideration, and it's popular in both Commander and Cube, and those types of cards are always something that I'm like, oh yeah, this was a really successful card, But I think we have to. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll definitely give a shout out to Fractured Identity. Great Mark Gottlieb design, 3 blue-white sorcery, exile a non-land permanent. Every other player gets a copy of it. Cool card. I don't think it won the set for me personally. If you want to give it that award, you can. But it's a sweet card.
I don't want to give that the award because I already have another card in mind for that one. But I just want to shout that one out because it's not often that you just see a card that is both popular in Commander and a staple in a lot of cubes, and it's just a cool card. So yeah. But anyway, on to other cards. I cannot give it to Edgar. I'm sorry, that did not win. That's not winning anything as far as won the set. No way. So I will give it to Teferi's Protection because it is a staple in white decks. Resonant design, beloved card. Most white decks just want to play it. I will say, I think, we as, Magic designers do have to be careful about making cards that are staples in a color, especially monocolor, if this card goes in every white deck, that just raises a red flag of oh, this card is probably too strong. But Teferi's Protection is a reactive card. And at the end of the day, reactive cards are only going to be strong in very specific situations. So I don't necessarily think this card is too strong, but it is very strong and cool. So yeah, I will give it to that one for winning the set.
It is a bit of a bummer to me to give Teferi's Protection the win of the set award, just because it's got nothing to do with the set. It's
that's very unfortunate.
Four tribal commander decks. What card won it? The Teferi White Instant.
The card that's in the vampire deck.
Right. But I agree. I do have to give it to Teferi's Protection. It's so iconic, so beloved. So I all your arguments apply to me. I'm going to give it there. Maybe you have a different opinion. You can let us know in the comments down below. So Melissa, there's only one thing left to do here. Final grade.
Oh, final grade.
2017.
Okay.
Lots of cool stuff. The tribes were fun.
So now we can weigh Eminence into our final grade.
Now we definitely factor in.
Yeah, so Eminence is enough of a like this design is bad to me where like it's going to like knock off a lot of points, but like, all right, so Eminence is bad. We've already established that, but there are a lot of good things going for these decks. A lot of resonant tribes, and a lot of just really like fun stuff, staples, and a lot of cool stuff going on. So like I can't knock it down too much, but Eminence does like kind of kill the grade for me. How harsh should I want to be with Eminence? That's the question. I feel like giving it a C is a little too harsh, honestly. So I think I'm in like the C plus B minus range, you know? It's rough. Maybe it is a C actually, because Eminence is not something that I would really want to do again, especially with this execution. I think it has a lot of problems. So we'll go with C for very poor design on the commanders, but great resonant flavor and designs on the deck themes. So yeah, so it just averages out to a C.
It means we've recorded somehow we cut a deck, Melissa, and we made our longest show ever. I don't know how that's possible, but that's how we got here.
We went on quite a few tangents. That's the thing. I felt like for some of the other ones that we did, especially like the last couple, we went on way less tangents and we kind of kept things a lot more to the point. Yeah. And we didn't really do that this time. Anyway.
There's this thing I say that's like the easiest way to be late is think that you're early, you know? So it's like, oh, I got all this extra time before I got to leave to go to the opera or whatever. I'm just going to like take my time and do stuff around the house. And then before you know it, you're like running late, like trying to get there on time or whatever. And we took our time. But if you like the tangents, let us know in the comments, you know, and
very
or maybe you just want a lean show. Super curious to know what you think. For me, so I basically feel like this is one of the best commander products we have ever made, except for Eminence. It's like, I think that I know I had quabbles about the decks. I didn't give them like all like the highest grades ever or whatever. But I think the themes are resonant. Tribal, we know players love. A lot of the new cards are really appealing. Off the shelf, like you identify with the stuff really well. It brought new people into the format. Like it did a lot of things really, really, really well. But Eminence is such a kick for just like how these things turned out. So I think I'm going to give it a B. I'm just going to bring it. Normally I would give it an A. I think that Eminence brings it down just a full letter grade to me to a B. Maybe supposed to bring it down more. I would love to be able to take, actually after we finish these decks, my pitch was we should do tribal decks more often. Like every few years, we should do a set of tribal commander decks. Then, over time, commander decks have changed. Now we have them with every set. So, it's not like we don't exactly do this thing the same way that we used to. But I think there's a lot of room for fun tribal commander decks. And I think let's just not do Eminence with them next time. Let's do something different.
Yeah, great.
But yeah, but we did it. So I gave it a B. You gave it a B minus. Is that right? Or C?
Oh, I ended up going with C.
C? All right.
Because I'm very down on Eminence, but like that's harsh, honestly. That might have been a little too harsh.
No, it's fine. These are our opinions. You've listened to our opinions for the past, I don't know, 2.5 or 2 hour 15 or so. And we all thank you so much for watching the show. Please, if you have any comments, any thoughts on all the things we've talked about, drop them down below. And Melissa and I love hearing from you. And thanks for watching and sticking with us on this journey. Any last words, Melissa?
These episodes are always super fun. We don't do them very often. It's like, every couple weeks or so, but like they are like very fun to just talk about all these old cards and like bring up so many old stories. It's always super cool. And I love hearing like the feedback from all of you guys at home. So thank you again, Gavin, for having me on, and like look forward to doing these more.
Totally. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Julie's Cafe for fueling us. And we'll be back next time in some indeterminate amount of time with Commander 2018, which is another lead design that I had. And there's plenty to talk about there as well, with all kinds of fun cards like Eureka. But until then, hope you all enjoyed learning about this set, Commander 2017. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought, and I will talk with you again soon. And remember, you got this.
Futuristic theme. So we really wanted to focus on that. We wanted to make sure that it sounded futuristic to fit the Neon Dynasty part of Kamigawa. And other than that, we had kind of a little bundle of like very large scale concepts. Like we sent people